Fatal Star, Starmage Saga Book 7, written and narrated by J.J. Green. Chapter 1. Karina faced some tough decisions, but she'd already made one. She had decided to exclude Parthenia from the meeting to discuss the plans for the voyage to Earth. Her sister was pissed off, but it wasn't for the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Plenty of other people were attending. Jackson had come as the representative of the Black Dogs, and Shao, the pilot, was there for obvious reasons. Karina had also invited Justus, the sole remaining Lotokrillon, due to his knowledge of the current sector's star systems. The ship's database held some information, but it was centuries out of date. There were two more attendees, Bryce and Jace. Bryce was essential. He knew her weaknesses as a leader and would counterbalance them. Jace's presence was important too. He was probably the wisest person on the ship. Shao spoke first, giving her estimation of the length of the journey ahead. 259 years, Karina exclaimed. I don't understand. When you showed me Earth on the star map holo, it was in the same frame as the ship's position. Those maps cover vast areas. I thought you knew that. You've flown starships. Only a little. I basically managed not to crash them. You're sure it's going to take us that long to reach Earth? I'm not making this up, the pilot said tetchily. It'll take us a decade or so to slow down for maximum speed too, don't forget. I know, but... Karina was at a loss for words. She looked to the others, wondering if they were as surprised as her at the pilot's revelation. We knew Earth had to be very far away for its position to be forgotten, said Bryce, and the galaxy's tens of thousands of light years across. I suppose it shouldn't come as any surprise we have a long journey before us. Jackson shifted in his seat, his prosthetic arm softly clunking on the tabletop. I don't get what the big deal is. We'll be in deep sleep most of the time. Doesn't matter if it takes us 200 or 2,000 years to get to Earth, does it? I don't want to leave the ship on automatic pilot, said Karina. Remember the Regions? We need at least a skeleton crew up and around most of the time. And now we don't have the Lotokrillons. She avoided looking at Justus. There are even fewer of us. How are we going to manage it so we don't all die before we reach our destination? Yeah, well, said Jackson. We did have a skeleton crew when the Regions attacked, and we know how that turned out. You're seriously arguing we shouldn't bother leaving anyone awake because it won't make any difference? That we're doomed whatever we do? Bryce touched her forearm. Jackson has a point. The Bathsheba is a prize for any outlaw spacefarers who spot her, and as we leave the more densely populated areas, there are going to be more of them. Maybe our real problem is how to defend the ship regardless of how many of us are awake or in deep sleep. We were boarded last time, and we could be again. Jace had been silent, stroking his beard up until this point. But then he leaned both elbows on the table and said, You're right, Bryce, and we must remember the detrimental effects of deep sleep too. If we do manage to rig up an automatic defense system, we still mustn't sleep the journey away. We need a timetable of waking and sleeping periods for everyone aboard. Great, muttered Karina. Now we have two problems. The older mage smiled. We have two opportunities. One, to give the Bathsheba the best defences we can, and two, to figure out whose company we will have the pleasure of enjoying while we're awake. As I recall, Karina, going to Earth was your life's ambition. It looks like you may achieve it, and while you're relatively young. Not many can say the same. Or not so young, she said. It sounds like I'll be an old woman by the time we arrive. What do we know about the safety parameters of deep sleep? Does anyone know how long it's safe to stay under? I can check the database for information, said Jackson. But we know that 70-plus years stretch nearly did Calverley in, though he was an old guy to start off with. That probably didn't help. A pang of sadness hit Karina. The old Shura officer had been murdered by the lot of Krillans while she was away buying starship fuel. He had given her sage advice on commanding the ship and its crew, and according to Bryce, he'd allied himself with the Black Dogs, warning them of the impending Lotta Krillin attack. At one time, Calverley had been a hated enemy, but he hadn't deserved such a brutal, ignoble death. She wished she had the benefit of his years of military experience now. "Let me know what you find out," she said to Jackson. "I remember feeling like shit when I came out of suspension last time. I don't think anyone, young or old, should be under that long again. My guess is our bodies can only sustain maybe 40 or 50 years of deep sleep, tops, before we suffer harmful effects." "You should look up how long it takes to recover too," Shao commented. "We need to be awake at least that long before going under again." "Got it," replied Jackson. "How's the training with Bibic going?" Karina asked the pilot. Bibic was Shao's apprentice. She had been teaching him the ropes for several weeks. Karina had taken some lessons as well, though she didn't feel confident to pilot the gigantic colony ship solo yet. "Pretty well. He isn't a natural, but he's keen and he listens, which is more than can be said for most 19-year-olds. Present company accepted." Karina chuckled. "As another 19-year-old, I don't see myself as an exception, but I hope I've been listening too." "Absolutely," the pilot replied, also laughing. "You sure about that?" asked Bryce. Karina gave him a playful shove. In truth, the need for competent people to check the Bathsheba's heading and progress regularly was vital. Shao, Bibic, and herself would be the bare minimum required to avoid a major disaster. The ship had sufficient fuel to take them the distance, but they couldn't risk travelling far off course. A mistake of a fraction of a degree meant a journey of millions of kilometres in the wrong direction. "Could you check among the crew for another volunteer apprentice?" she asked Shao, who nodded. "Good. We're making progress," said Jace. "If Jackson finds out the information we need, we can figure out the deep sleep schedule." Turning to the man, he added, "You might want to speak to Nala about accessing the database. She's been digging around in there for a while." The merc's eyes rose. "The kid?" "Don't be fooled by the fact she's only as tall as your chest," said Bryce. "She's sharp as a tack." "Noted," Jackson replied. "So, what about these defences for the Bathsheba? Seems to me that's the most important question here, not who's going to sleep and when." It wasn't only the most important question, it was the hardest. If even the unintelligent Regians could overcome the colony ship's armaments, it meant the weapons were inadequate at fending off any determined attack. "Can we improve our current stock?" asked Karina. "Do we have anyone among the Black Dogs who could assess them for potential improvements?" "Doubt it," Jackson replied. "Our techs have struggled with most of the ship's systems. I don't think anyone's even taken a look at the weapons. I can ask." "From what I've heard," said Shao tentatively, "our best weapon's your brother. The youngest one, I mean." "Darius? A weapon?" Karina exclaimed. "Hey!" The pilot raised her hands in a gesture of placation. "It's just what I heard. He's the most powerful one out of all of you, isn't he?" Karina's jaw muscles tightened as she tried to frame a reply. Bryce squeezed her forearm. "But Darius will be in deep sleep for most of the journey," said Jace mildly, "like the rest of us." "I know. I just thought he could—" "What?" Karina asked. "Do one of those spells you do, like, maybe—" Shao's words trailed off under Karina's hard stare. "Maybe you should stop digging," Justus advised. Shao clamped her lips together and looked away. "What do you think we should do?" Jace asked the Lotokrillon. "You haven't said much yet." "I've been too busy listening. I agree with all you've discussed so far. For my part, I'm grateful for the opportunity to accompany you all. After the behaviour of my companions, it would have been understandable if you'd marooned me at the nearest habitable planet." Bryce said. "You did nothing wrong. Even so, on my home world, I would have been executed for my association with the mutineers." "You aren't on Lotokrilla," said Karina. "We aren't like that." She was calming down after Shao's suggestion that her little brother should be used as some kind of human shield. "Fortunately for me," said Justus, "regarding the ship's armaments, I recall my father talking about a place that specializes in them." "An entire planet that specializes in producing space weapons?" asked Bryce. "No, a space station. It orbits a star that lacks any naturally habitable satellites, and the star sits between 3 systems at war with each other. From what my dad said, the station plies a very good trade supplying each side with technology." "Cool idea," said Jackson. "A market that never becomes exhausted. As soon as one side gets the latest weapons tech, the other 2 sides want it as well." Karina sighed. "I'm not in love with the idea of a diversion from our route and more delay. We could pay for an armaments upgrade with Ember Gems, I guess, but I was hoping we could set out right away." "On the other hand," Shao offered tentatively, "I don't like the idea of going into deep sleep not knowing if I'll wake up." Karina frowned. What was it with the pilot? They'd gotten along pretty well up until now. Shao seemed to want to deliberately antagonize her. "Can we trust the people at this station?" asked Jace. "What's to stop them seizing the Bathsheba?" "It would be bad for their reputation," replied Justus. "Why would they do something unscrupulous when they're so successful?" "Should we put it to a vote?" asked Jackson. "I like the idea of upgrading the ship's defences. Like Shao says, it'll help us sleep better." "I'm not sure it's necessary," said Karina. "But I'd rather do that than have a 7-year-old child as our first line of defence." Shao rolled her eyes. "I only meant, never mind." "Let's vote," Karina said, though she was sure of the outcome. Chapter 2. "When are we going to sleep?" Darius asked Karina as she entered the siblings' suite. He bounced into her arms, wrapping himself around her and nearly bowling her over. "Hey," she admonished, "you're getting too big for this." He certainly had grown. He was much bigger and stronger than the little boy she'd rescued from the Dirksons more than a year ago. More importantly, he seemed much happier too. Putting him down, she said, "We aren't going into deep sleep for a few weeks yet." "Good," Fern exclaimed. "Oriana and I have lots of fashion design ideas we want to try out." "Silly," said his twin sister. "It doesn't matter if we do that before or after we enter stasis, as long as we're awake together." She turned to Karina with a frown. "We will be together, right?" "Don't worry. I know better than to try to separate you two." "We're all going to be together, aren't we?" asked Darius hopefully. "The sleep schedule hasn't been finalized, but yes, we will." "You don't have to include me," said Parthenia. "I'd be fine with being awake while the rest of you are sleeping." Nala looked up from the interface she'd been reading and put both hands to her face before rolling her eyes. Parthenia must have been sniping at her brothers and sisters while the meeting had been going on, taking out her anger on them. She wasn't mad at her. If anything, she felt sorry for her. Feeling hurt by her exclusion from the meeting was natural, even if it had been necessary. More significantly, Parthenia's boyfriend Camille had been killed while she was in the throes of her first love. She had to still be working through her grief. "We'll be in deep sleep together," Karina said gently. "All of us. The voyage will be long. It's going to take centuries to reach Earth." "Centuries?" exclaimed Oriana. "Of course," said Nala matter-of-factly. "Didn't you know? Not everyone has read the entire ship's database back to front and inside out," Oriana retorted. Karina explained, "We don't have any choice except to leave the ship to run on automatic for years at a time. There aren't enough of us to always have even a few people awake for the entire journey. We would all age and die before we reached Earth. There's no point in trying to have a mage in every group not in deep sleep, so we might as well stick together." "The Bathsheba will fly without anyone awake?" asked Darius. His brown eyes grew wide. "Like a ghost ship?" "Ooh, spooky," said Nala. "But what if one of us wakes up and can't go back into deep sleep?" Darius continued. "He would be all alone, and he would get old while everyone else stays the same age. I could be an old man by the time you woke up, Karina." "That's not going to happen," she said, trying to sound reassuring, though her brother's words were painting a creepy picture in her head. She gave him a hug. Nala asked, "If we aren't going to sleep yet, what are we going to do? I thought we had all the fuel we needed to reach Earth." "We're going to have the Bathsheba fitted with some equipment at a place called Lakshmi Station." "Lack what?" asked Fern. "Lakshmi," Karina repeated more slowly. "What a strange name," said Oriana. "Why is it called that?" "I don't know. It's probably named after the founder. I'll explain more during "And who decided we're going to this station?" Parthenia interjected. "The people at the meeting. We took a vote." "But what if I don't want to go? What if other people on the ship don't want to go? Don't we get a choice?" Karina sighed. "Jackson spoke for the Black Dogs, the biggest group among us by far, and he voted to go to the station. So if you're trying to make a point about democracy, I'm trying to make a point about my free will." "We always do what Karina says," said Nala. "She saved us from—" "I haven't always wanted to do what she says. And when I didn't, she made me." She clearly hadn't forgotten the time Karina had been forced to enthrall her to get her away from danger on Ostalon. And she would never forget. "I was trying to save your life," Karina protested. "Don't be dumb, Parthenia," said Fern mildly. "If you don't come with us, where will you go?" "This isn't about alternatives. This is about having a say." "Well, you've had your say. Now shut up and let's eat. I'm hungry." Parthenia gave a huff of frustration, spun on her heel, and marched to her bedroom. Aboard a starship, it was impossible to slam a door, but Karina guessed that was what her sister would have done if she'd had the chance. "Phew," said Fern. "Now we can eat in peace." "Don't be mean," Karina scolded. "She's upset." Her sister was hurting, and her pain was apparently bringing all her past grievances to the front of her mind. Perhaps not allowing her to attend the meeting had been a mistake. "Can we get some nice food at Lakshmi Station?" asked Fern. "I'm getting tired of printed stuff. It doesn't taste the same as fresh." "We can try, but they specialize in starship equipment, not general supplies." After a disastrous visit to Magog, attempting to restock the ship, they'd been forced to go to Gog, a much sparser, more basic place where they could only buy fuel, not much else. She wasn't too concerned about fresh food, but they definitely needed the complex chemicals required for the nutrient solution in the deep sleep chambers. Fern's question reminded her she needed to check how much they had in store, especially now she knew how long they would be sleeping. What kind of equipment? Darius asked. Just stuff we need. Who's ready for dinner? Later, as she was getting ready for bed, she said to Bryce, I don't know what to do about Parthenia. She threw a fit today after I came back from the meeting. She was so angry I'd excluded her, she went into her room and wouldn't come out to eat. I think I made a bad call. Maybe. It wouldn't have hurt to have her there. I didn't know she felt so strongly about it. I knew, but I kept to my guns. I wanted to limit the numbers for efficiency's sake. Is that the only reason? Would one more person really have made a big difference? Guess not. She frowned, confused. Why had she been so adamant Parthenia didn't attend? Do you think maybe you were trying to protect her? Protect her from what? I don't know. You tell me. Karina sat on their bed. Do you think I'm overprotective of the kids? What? Bryce exclaimed, raising his hands in mock outrage. No, never. She grinned sheepishly. I suppose you have a point, but to be fair, things have been dangerous and difficult for them for a long time, ever since their monster of a father took them out of their estate on Ithia. Bryce joined her on the bed and put an arm around her, pulling her close. I'm only saying Parthenia has grown up over the last year or so, and even before that, from what you've said, she was older than her years. I know you love your family, our family, and you'd do anything to keep them from harm, but maybe it's time to start treating your oldest sister like an adult. It wouldn't have been a problem for her to come to the meeting, and it would have made her feel like she was being taken seriously. That means a lot when you're 17. Oh, Bryce. She laid her head on his shoulder. How can I be a good mother to those kids? I don't have a clue what I'm doing. No one's expecting you to be their mother, and you've already been an amazing older sister. But maybe it's time to loosen the reins a little. Yeah, I hear you. I'll apologize to Parthenia tomorrow. Good idea. I'm sure she'll come around. He touched her chin and turned it toward his before kissing her. Together they fell backward onto the bed. Chapter 3. Karina was in the Twilight Dome when Xiao arrived, sitting in the shadows directly beneath an opaque section of overhead, repaired after the bomb blast. She was in a melancholy mood, thinking about the journey ahead, and didn't feel like talking. When she saw the pilot come in, she shrank into her seat, hoping she couldn't be seen. She'd been avoiding Xiao since the meeting. The pilot's comments about Darius still rankled, but Xiao's sharp gaze soon found her. Karina, I thought you might be here. Yeah, just hanging out. Can I join you? No. Xiao came over and sat next to her before looking upward through one of the remaining transparent areas of Hull, where a field of stars glittered in the black. You've come to see Lakshmi Station. Huh? You can see it from here, didn't you know? The pilot pointed in the direction of a brilliant star outshining all the others. I figured that's where we're going, said Karina. But that's the sun the station's orbiting, isn't it? It can't be the station itself. The biggest planet in the system. Look between the planet and the sun. There's a tiny speck. Can you see it? Karina squinted. There was a pinprick of light at the spot Xiao described. Whoa, she breathed. It must be vast. It's quite something, right? And the star it orbits is unusual too. It's spinning super slowly, and its spectrum is wild. Neodymium, strontium, cesium, all kinds of heavy elements. You wouldn't normally expect a star to emit anything like that. Okay, Karina replied. Xiao was a bit of a nerd. Normally she wouldn't mind listening to the pilot's monologues on obscure subjects, but today she wasn't in the mood. Xiao took the hint and was silent for a while. Then she said, About your brother. What about him? I think you misunderstood what I was getting at the meeting. You do you? Yeah. The pilot squirmed uncomfortably. I didn't mean he should be responsible for defending us if we're attacked. I only meant... Her words faltered to a stop. What? Karina turned to face her. What did you mean? Look, Darius might be the most powerful mage in my family, and he might be able to do things the rest of us find impossible. But at the end of the day, he's just a little boy. And more than that, what you have to understand is a lot of what he does hurts him. When we were on Magog and he guessed Kai Wei was a dark mage, it was because he felt the man's evilness and corruption. And when he knew the star whale was in agony from the Regian's binding, it was because he felt her pain. Would you like to live like that? No, Shao muttered. No, me neither. Even if it meant I could do all the things Darius can. His abilities come at a price, and he doesn't have a choice about it. So when I hear people talking about him like he's a thing, something to be used for everyone's benefit, it pisses me off. All right, I get it. Karina took a deep breath, and Bryce's gentle advice came back to her. Moderating her tone, she said, I appreciate you coming to talk to me about it and trying to set things straight between us. I hope you understand now where I'm coming from. I didn't know that about your brother, that he's sensitive in that way. I suppose, outside the family and Bryce, we don't really talk about what being a mage means. When I was growing up, I had it drummed into me that I had to keep my abilities secret, and my mother did the same with my siblings. None of us is comfortable with discussing this stuff with non-mages. I'd like to know more, if you're okay with talking about it. I think it's fascinating. I'd love to understand how it works. You and me both. You don't know. The only explanation I've seen for mage powers is in the old documents we found on Ostalon. They were written by the mages who colonized the planet, though the stories were already ancient history by that time. They say the original mages believed they carried a genetic mutation, and the ability to cast was unlocked when someone experimented with drinking mixtures of different substances. It does have to be something in our genes. That's how Kai Wei identified us on Magog, through the saliva samples. A genetic variation makes sense, said Shao. But that doesn't explain how you do what you do. Transporting from one place to another, starting fires, healing people, locking doors so they can't be opened. None of it has any rational explanation, according to the laws of physics. Beats me. It isn't something I think about. My grandma taught me how to cast, the same as she taught me to read and write. Do you wonder about how you can read? No, but... The pilot's brow wrinkled. I can explain why I can read. I can explain most things if I put my mind to it. I could tell you how the Bathsheba's engines work, for instance, and why it's odd Lakshmi Station star emits heavy metal particles. Karina shrugged. Shao turned her gaze upward to the star field again and was silent. Karina also concentrated on the speck that was the station, trying to guess how big it was. It had to be at least the size of a substantial moon. After several minutes, the pilot said, There has to be an explanation for everything, even if we don't know it yet. It took us hundreds of thousands of years to invent deep space engines, but we did it in the end. Maybe one day someone will figure out what makes mages different. Maybe one day splicers will be able to give anyone the same abilities. I certainly hope so. Life would be a lot easier. Shao got to her feet. For me too. I'd love to close my eyes and transport myself anywhere on the ship. The Bathsheba's way too big. I usually walk, said Karina. Though I can't deny it's nice to have the option of a shortcut. How long until we dock? We've been slowing down for a while, a couple of days, assuming they allow us to dock right away. Why would we have to wait? Lakshmi's a busy place, There's space traffic all around it. We've been picking up their advertising spiel for days too." "We have? I didn't know. You should have a listen. It's illuminating." Chapter 4. Lakshmi Station was shaped like two squares superimposed, creating an 8-pointed star. The Bathsheba approached the upper side, in the lane of space traffic. Parthenia watched with Shao and a few of the black dogs as the station grew gradually larger on the bridge hollow. The pilot would perform the maneuver to dock, but after that she would join the away party. Parthenia wasn't going to the station. Karina had snubbed her again, but she had no interest in business meetings anyway. Father had forced her to attend too many meetings with clients on Ithia. He had made her cast enthrall on the unsuspecting men and women so they would agree to unfavourable terms. She felt sick, and her skin prickled with anxiety just remembering. Participating in the process again would bring back many bad memories, though she didn't think Karina would pull the same underhanded trick to buy space weapons for the Bathsheba. One of the black dogs, a woman called Van Hasty, quietly swore, expressing her wonder at the size of the station. "How far away are we?" she asked Shao. "An hour." "As long as that?" "Uh-huh. But we stop here. I'm reversing thrust to bring us to a standstill. When I've shut the engines down, I'll fly the Peregrine the rest of the way. Bibic will be along soon to keep an eye on things while I'm gone." The edges of Lakshmi disappeared, and the station took up the entire view, the detail of its hull growing more defined as each second passed. Lines cut across the base of the points of the construction, channels of some kind, separating the triangles from the octagonal whole. More lines crisscrossed the main surface, creating an intricate pattern that Karina guessed was more decorative than practical. There would be conduits, service tunnels, air ducts, and much more running underneath the hull, but there was no reason for these to show on the outside as far as she knew. It looked quite pretty, if a space station could ever be called pretty, which was strange considering its trade. "Shit!" said Van Hasty. "I wish I was going with you, Shao. Must be all kinds of fun things to do there." "You'll get your turn. As soon as we've figured out what we're doing about the armaments, everyone will get their R&R. I could do with it. How long has it been since we had a chance to let our hair down?" "Stop complaining," said another black dog, Reese. "You went planet-side with our friends, the Regians. What more fun could you want?" "Huh. I wouldn't call nearly being made a lava snack fun, but whatever floats your boat." Reese's face creased as he grinned, and he seemed about to fire back a quick reply. But his gaze slid to Parthenia, and he hesitated before eventually saying, "You're welcome to float my boat any time, and you know it." "Yeah, you wish," said Van Hasty. Parthenia inwardly sighed. Reese was moderating what he said because she was present. The black dogs all treated her like a kid. Camille had been the only one who didn't, and now he was dead. A sob welled up in her throat, but she swallowed it. Karina treated her like a kid too, even though they were only 3 years apart. Her sister had apologized for not allowing her to attend the discussion about what to do next, but Parthenia knew she didn't really mean it, and she showed it when she left her out of the away party. There had been a time when she'd thought Karina had begun to see her as more of an equal, but that was forgotten now. The next time something important had to be done, she would be excluded again. She wished Magog hadn't been run by dark mages. She and Camille could have stayed there, abandoning the journey to Earth. She could have had some kind of freedom. Now her fate was tied up with her families and the black dogs. Whatever they did, she would be sucked into it. She had no choice and no say, because everyone saw her as a child. "Hey," said Shao, "listen to this." She did something on her console, and suddenly the bridge was filled with sound. "Welcome to Lakshmi Station, Technology Center of the sector. What do you need? Space cannon? Mechs? The latest energy weapons? Whatever you want, you'll find it here, guaranteed. The most up-to-date, cutting-edge tech at your fingertips, all for a reasonable price. Or maybe you're only looking for somewhere to get away from the stresses of interplanetary conflict. You've come to the right place. Bars, sim pads, leisure hotels, extra-friendly hosts and hostesses. Anything and everything you need to relax and forget the war for a while." The voice continued at a faster pace and in a more serious tone. "No personal arms allowed on site, and brawlers will be immediately and permanently expelled." The message began to repeat, and Xiao turned it off. "Extra-friendly hostesses?" Rees asked, grinning again. "I like the sound of the latest space cannon," said Van Hasty. "Waking up to a ship invasion was a nasty surprise I don't want to repeat. I hope Karina has the creds to get us the best." "She's paying with the last of the Ember Gems," Parthenia commented. "I don't know how much they're worth." "None of us does," said Xiao. "They're a Gerial sector thing. Never heard of them back home." "She'd better watch out," Rees said, "or she'll get ripped off." "Yeah," said Van Hasty ruefully. "It happens easily enough. You're still up for a trip to the station after hearing that, Rees?" "Course, why not?" "Didn't you hear the bit about no personal arms and brawlers expelled?" "Yeah, so?" Xiao laughed. "I'll explain it to him in simple terms. We're right in the middle of 3 warring systems, and they're all coming here to fill their weapon orders. All of them. What do you think the tension on the station's going to be like?" Rees's eyes widened and he whistled. "Holy shit! They'll be at each other's throats." "He's got it!" Van Hasty exclaimed sarcastically. Rees went on. "Can't wait to get down there." "You're kidding, right?" asked Xiao. "Nah, who doesn't like a good bar fight?" "Well," Van Hasty said, "you'd better not get caught or your R&R will be cut short, and you won't be getting any more." "Yeah, I'll wait until I've spent some time with those extra-friendly hostesses before starting anything." Van Hasty wrinkled her nose. "You! Hostesses? Sex bots, you mean? What if they don't clean themselves properly between—" Rees elbowed her, nodding at Parthenia. Van Hasty gave her a glance and continued, "Turns." Parthenia clenched her jaw. "For goodness sake, I know what you were going to say. I know those words. You can say them around me without my ears falling off or my head exploding." "Sorry," said Rees, "but you know what your sister's like. If she gets wind we've been treating you like another merc, our lives won't be worth living." "Yes," Parthenia retorted bitterly. "I do know what my sister's like." She stalked from the bridge. Chapter 5. The umbilicus snaked out from the Peregrine's airlock. The ship's outer hatches were not compatible with the station's, so the away party was forced to enter it via the slightly more risky method, which meant EVA suits for everyone. At the farther end, Lakshmi Station waited. "Okay," said Karina via her helmet's comm. "Let's go." She reached for the nearest handhold and pulled herself into the tube. As she moved out of the Bathsheba's Agrav field, she floated forward, her momentum carrying her almost too fast for her to grab the next bar. The umbilicus was about 20 meters long. Glancing back to check the others weren't having any problems, she saw Xiao, Jackson, and Justus in a line behind her. She wished Jace had agreed to come too, but he'd turned her down. He hadn't given much of an explanation, only saying he didn't know the first thing about space weapons or commercial negotiations. The guy was a pacifist at heart and would never change. She'd invited Bryce as well, though she had to admit the invitation had been half-hearted. He'd seemed to guess she would prefer him to stay on the ship and look after the kids. Turning a bend in the umbilicus, she saw the station's hatch opening and the light of its airlock. She pulled herself onward to reach it. The station's A-grav quickly settled on her, and she had to twist fast to get her feet under her before she hit the deck. Xiao and the others arrived, the hatch closed, the airlock pressurized, and the inner portal opened. On the other side, the passageway was empty. Karina removed her helmet and peered up and down it. "Huh? What were you expecting?" Xiao asked, tucking her helmet under her arm. "A welcoming committee?" A muffled beeping was coming from inside Karina's suit. She unzipped it and opened the comm. "Party from the Peregrine to proceed to Deck 5. Justice said, "They want to check we aren't going to shoot the place up before they see us face to face." "Makes sense," said Karina. There was only one other exit from the passageway, a set of elevator doors. When they were inside, it didn't ask where they wanted to go. There was only one stop. The doors opened at Deck 5. "Welcome to Lakshmi Station," said a man on the other side of a high desk. He and the desk stood behind a deck-to-overhead transparent shield. "You're from out sector, right?" "That's right, except one of us." She remembered Justice's planet, Lotta Krilla, was in Gerial. "I'm not from around these parts," said Justice, "so I'm probably not on your system either." "Step forward one at a time for your retinal scans," said the man, "and to receive your visitor ID code. From now on, if you don't show your code on request, you'll be immediately returned to your ship, and your permission to enter the station will be permanently revoked." Karina went first. After looking into the scanner, she had to present the inside of her wrist, where a laser etched a pattern. It stung a bit, but didn't hurt too bad. When they'd all been scanned and received their codes, the man said, "Deposit your suits in the locker room to your left." Karina asked, "Do you—" "Locker room to your left." She trudged to the room. She'd only been going to ask if there was somewhere to sell gems. Lakshmi was not Gog. It wasn't a backwater planet where people could barter for what they wanted. The traders here would only deal in creds. Heck, they probably had showrooms and catalogues. Tall lockers lined the walls in the next room. Along with the others, Karina took off her Eva suit, hung it up in a locker, and closed the door. A square hole opened up. "What's this?" she asked. "You breathe into it," said Justice. "The locker records your breath signature. It'll only open if the same person breathes into it again." Her stomach tightened. The last time her bio-ID had been recorded, she, Darius, and Parthenia had been identified as mages. "Does it collect your DNA?" "Only your breath chemicals, I think." "You think?" "I'm not a biosignature expert, Karina." "It's only to be expected," Xiao commented. "They need to use it for security." "Yeah," said Karina. "But you know what happened on Magog." "It's no big deal, is it?" asked Jackson. "If they wanted your DNA," Xiao said, "they would ask you for something different." Karina sighed and leaned in to put her mouth to the square, hoping the station security didn't want anything else. A soft snick emanated from the locker. Next, they had to pass through a short, brightly lit tunnel. Karina went first, followed by Justice and Xiao, with Jackson bringing up the rear. Karina stepped out on the farther side. "Scanning us," murmured Justice as he joined her. "Yeah," said Xiao. "They're probably looking at our insides too." "They don't want to see what I just ate," said Jackson. An alarm sounded, and a metal plate slid across the tunnel, shutting Jackson inside. "Shit!" Karina banged on the metal. "Jackson, can you hear me?" She thought she heard some indistinct shouting, then silence. "Uh-oh," said Xiao. Karina turned around. When she'd exited the tunnel, There had been an open door in the chamber on the other side. Now the door was closed. "Additional security check required," said a smooth voice from an intercom. "Please wait." "What the hell?" said Xiao. "He wasn't trying to smuggle a weapon in, was he?"
"I hope not,"
said Justus.
"We'll be screwed if he was. They don't need our business. If we're lucky, they'll only kick us off the station."
"What if we're not lucky?" asked Xiao. Justus didn't answer. 10 seconds passed. "Jackson isn't dumb," said Karina. "He can't be armed, can he?" As the words left her mouth, an idea about why the merc had been detained hit. But before she could state it, the metal plate slid back, revealing Jackson bare-chested. 2 people in armoured suits were walking away from him. "It was your arm, right?" Karina asked. The man's prosthetic was extensive, encompassing his entire right shoulder, as well as the missing limb. Below the elbow downward, it looked like a normal arm, but above that it was covered in a dull, flexy metal skin. The cost-cutting of the cheaper coating on the upper arm and shoulder came as no surprise. The Black Dog's former boss, Tarsalan, had been notoriously cheap. Though Karina had always known about the prosthetic, she had never seen the whole thing before. Jackson must have received quite an injury to lose so much of his body. He seemed embarrassed as he hastened to put on his shirt before answering her. Pulling the lower edge over his hips, he said, "Yeah, they wanted to check I wasn't hiding a fancy gun." The door at the opposite end of the chamber opened. "Looks like we're good to go," said Xiao.
"You know,"
said Justus as they walked out,
"that might not be such a crazy idea. Fitting your arm with a gun, I mean. Once we're out of here, of course. Have you ever considered it?" "Never thought about it," Jackson replied. "Or you could get a natural arm regrown," Justus continued. "I don't know about where you're from, but it was a common procedure on my world. You're stuck in bed for a couple of weeks, but after that—" "Never thought about it," the merc repeated in a harsher tone. Justus shrugged. Jackson's sensitivity was a little odd. Karina had heard him crack jokes about his arm many times. She guessed it was one of those cases where it was okay for him to joke about it, but not anyone else. They seemed to have finally passed the security procedures. They stepped out into a busy thoroughfare humming with life, though not all of it was human. In her short career as a merc, she had encountered several alien species. Most had been humanoid. Evolution seemed to favour bipedal organisms for the development of intelligence. The similarity to humans made them not too hard to get used to. But the first alien she spotted at Lakshmi Station made her jump. It scuttled like a spider, though the creature had more legs and skin rather than a carapace, and its head, what appeared to be its head, stuck up from the centre of its body. It also wore clothes. Fabric draped over it and hung down between its legs. She wondered how long it took to get dressed, and if it was confusing trying to fit its legs through the many holes. 10 or 12 black eyes ran around the alien's head like a crown, and its face contained 4 orifices, the largest below its eyes, and 3 more in a line below that. Fine, short, mottled grey fur coated its body. The alien was making a beeline for them. "Gross!" Xiao exclaimed, backing up. "Shit," said Karina. The creature seemed to be about to speak to them, but they didn't have a translator. It drew to a halt in front of them, swaying slightly as it poised on its claws. "Welcome to Lakshmi Station. My name is Bongo. I'll be your guide for your free introductory tour." "Bongo?" Chapter 6. A wave of sharp anger washed over Darius. Sadness, a sense of being alone, and something else he didn't know the word for.
Misery came with it. Parthenia was back. Though he hadn't seen her enter the living area because he was in his bedroom playing cards with Nala, he felt her arrival as clear as day, the same as always. He recognized all his family by the patterns of their feelings. If someone had blindfolded him, he could have picked each of them out and even made a good guess about how far away they were. The farther they went, the fainter their broadcast became, until at 400 or 500 meters they faded away. He'd never let on how well he could feel his brothers and sisters. He thought Mother had guessed, but he'd never talked to her about it. When he was younger, he hadn't been able to keep his face straight or stop himself from crying when a wave of emotion bashed into him. She would cuddle him, surrounding him with her love, trying to help. It hadn't helped. She was too sad. Mother's sadness had been a deep, dark well no one could ever fill. Not even him. He had tried, but he couldn't do it. If his family knew the truth about how deeply they affected him, it might hurt them. They would be sad and guilty. He didn't want them to have those bad feelings. He wanted them to be happy. He didn't want them to fear or hate him. "Hurry up," said Nala. "It's your turn." "Oh." He picked up his next card and placed it on the pile. Nala was winning again. She always won, whatever game they played, but he didn't mind. He liked playing with her. Fern and Oriana didn't spend much time with him anymore. They were busy designing and printing clothes. Nala was often busy too, searching for information in the Bathsheba's database or translating mage papers. But sometimes she agreed to play with him. He liked Nala best of all his brothers and sisters, except Karina, of course. He loved Karina so much it hurt. He would never forget the day she'd rescued him from the horrible Dirksen men who had cut him. Even then, before he knew she was his half-sister, he'd loved the way her care and concern wrapped around him like a big, soft blanket. Karina's pattern of emotions was strong and powerful. Every so often it wavered into sadness, but mostly it was strong. He felt safe when she was nearby. "I win," said Nala, putting her final card on the top of the pile. "Better luck next time." Darius gathered up the cards and began pushing them together to make a pack. "Do you want to play again?" "No, I'm bored with this game. It's too easy." "What about something else? We could play a different one." "All the games are too easy." "We could learn something new." "Like what?" "I don't know. Maybe we could find a new game on the database and learn the rules." Nala's face twisted as she considered his idea. Her feelings were mixed up. He guessed she didn't really want to play with him, and she'd only agreed to be kind. She didn't want to say yes, and she was trying to think of a way to say no nicely. "How about we do something else?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like—" She leaned closer. He sensed a strange emotion in her, fear tinged with a little bit of excitement. "Would you like to explore the ship with me?" "Is that all?" Darius replied, disappointed. The odd feeling she was giving out had raised his hopes she had something interesting to suggest. "We've explored the ship lots of times. How about we volunteer to be models for Fern and Oriana? They would like that." Nala wrinkled her nose. "I don't want to wear their silly clothes. And we haven't explored all the ship. I found a new place." "You did?" He was surprised and excited. "Like the time you found the Ember Gems on the Zenobia?" She nodded. "Promise you won't tell anyone?" "I promise." Now he came to think of it, he had been sensing a secretiveness about her lately. "Why don't you want anyone to know? Maybe there are more jewels hidden on this ship. Karina could use them to buy us more stuff. You know what grown-ups are like. If I tell them, they won't let us take a look. They'll say it's too dangerous. Well, it might be dangerous, said Darius, having second thoughts. It isn't. She frowned. And even if it is, you could transport us out of there, couldn't you? Yeah, but... He was still uneasy. If Karina knew they were planning on investigating a secret part of the Bathsheba, she wouldn't want them to do it. You promised not to tell anyone, Nala reminded him. If you don't want to come with me, that's okay. I'll go by myself, but you can't tell on me, okay? I suppose so, he said grudgingly. Do you want to come or not? Why didn't you go there by yourself already? Were you waiting until I agreed to go with you? Kinda. He didn't want to go. Starships weren't adventure playgrounds, as Karina had often said. There were garbage chutes and airlocks that you couldn't mess around with, or you might end up in space. There were restricted areas near the engine that were deadly if you stayed there too long. There were boxes and machinery that could fall on you. But if he didn't go with Nala and something bad happened to her, she couldn't cast to get herself out of trouble. All she could do was use the ship's comm, and her rescuers might not arrive in time. The Bathsheba was huge. If she needed an adult to help her, it would take too long for them to run there. I'll come, he said. But if it looks dangerous, we have to leave right away. Okay, Nala agreed. But I keep telling you, it isn't dangerous. Let me get my elixir, then we can go. He hopped down from his chair and grabbed his elixir bottle from the top of the cabinet. They went into the living area, where Oriana and Fern were drawing a design on an interface. Parthenia wasn't there. Darius could feel her in her bedroom, a bundle of heartache and unhappiness. He felt sorry for her. But whenever he tried to give her a hug, she would push him away. Where are you two going? Asked Fern as they headed for the door. We're getting something to eat, Nala replied. We only ate an hour ago, said Oriana. You can't be hungry again. Darius is. He's a growing boy. He needs to eat all the time. He elbowed her. Oriana and Fern would think he was a greedy pig. Couldn't she think up a better lie? Bring us something too, said Fern. Some of those corn crackers. Karina will be back late from her trip to Laxmi Station. Lakshmi, Oriana interrupted. That's what I said. Anyway, we won't be eating dinner until late, and I need something to keep me going. All right, Nala agreed. Corn crackers. Do you want anything, Oriana? Could you get me a brother who can speak properly? Darius and Nala giggled. Fern rolled his eyes. There's nothing wrong with how I speak. Should we get anything for Parthenia? Darius asked. No, said Oriana. No point. She's given up on eating. I expect she'll miss dinner again too. She's still upset after you-know-what. Darius did know what. The young man Parthenia liked had died. When it happened, her feelings had hit him like a flash flood racing down a riverbed. Okay, said Nala. See you later. Come on, Darius. Chapter 7. Where are you from? Bongo asked. He spoke through his upper orifice. The ones below were probably only for breathing, though why he needed 3 wasn't clear. The alien scuttled alongside Karina as they walked down the passageway. His head only came up to her waist, and when she looked at him she didn't know which of his many eyes to focus on. You won't have heard of it. We're from outside Gerial Sector. She didn't want to give him, or her, any more information than necessary. Justice might feel confident no one on Lakshmi would try to steal the Bathsheba, but she wasn't. She couldn't afford to be. The colony ship was all she had. That and the little pouch of ember gems in her pocket. Outside the sector, remarked the alien. Fascinating. Well, you're all human, so it doesn't really matter. What brings you to the station? We're interested in space armaments. Our ship is already heavily kitted out, she lied. But we heard Lakshmi has some of the most advanced tech in the region. You heard right. You won't find any better within the sector, let alone region. That's good to hear. I'm glad you can speak Universal. We don't have any translators. Do all the vendors speak Universal too? She'd presumed they would be human, but Bongo's existence had made her realise they might not. You don't need to be concerned about translation. If an arms specialist can find a way to part you from your creds, he'll do it, even if it means he has to speak. He concluded his sentence with a sound like someone gargling while at the same time trying not to throw up. Talking of creds, said Karina, we don't have any. Bongo stopped dead in his tracks and his head rotated as he scanned her with all his eyes. Then how do you plan to? We have valuable items we want to exchange. Is there a place we can do that? What kind of valuable items? I'd rather not say, and she certainly didn't want to pull out the gems to show him in the middle of a busy thoroughfare. I see. I can take you to some. A passer-by stepped too close and caught his foot on one of Bongo's many outspread legs. The stranger stumbled, but at half his weight, the alien came off worse from the collision. He flipped right over onto his back, his head bending into his body. "Damn spider creep!" the man yelled, getting to his feet. "Hey, take it easy," said Karina. "It was an accident." Bongo was struggling to right himself. The accident had drawn the attention of the crowd, and a ring of bystanders was forming. Wriggling exactly like an arachnid, the alien was becoming a spectacle. "Yuck!" someone murmured. "Revolting!" Everyone watching was human, and they were having exactly the reaction most humans had when confronted with an insect or spider in distress. Disgust. But Karina had always liked bugs. Nai had discouraged her from making friends, fearing she would accidentally reveal her mage powers, and her home planet hadn't evolved large life forms she could have as pets. So she had taken to playing with invertebrates, constructing elaborate homes for them in her room, much to her grandmother's annoyance when they inevitably escaped. She scooped Bongo up and set him on his feet. Meanwhile, Jackson snapped to the crowd, "What are you gawping at? Nothing to see here." "I can manage," the alien exclaimed. He shook himself like a wet dog and reached up with a couple of claws to adjust the cloth hanging below his belly. "Sorry," said Karina. "I was trying to help." "Are you all right?" asked Xiao. "I'm fine," Bongo retorted irritably. "Where were we? Currency exchange centres, right? I'll take you to some, and I'll show you the leisure and recreation facilities on the way." "We aren't interested in leisure and recreation," said Karina. But he didn't respond. She guessed it was his job to take them on the standard tour. What had been a bare pedestrian transit tunnel opened out into a commercial zone. The congestion eased in the wider space, and the air was suddenly filled with scents of food, perfumes, and other unrecognizable things. The noise increased. Sounds of talking, footsteps, and a warbling singer echoing from the 3-tier high walls and walkways. Justus continued unimpressed, but Karina, Xiao, and Jackson halted to take it all in. Stores, restaurants, cafes, offices, and establishments she didn't even recognize ranged around them. She had always kind of known such places existed, but she'd never seen one. The course of her life had never given her the opportunity to visit a high-end market like this. From the way they stared, she guessed Xiao and Jackson's backgrounds were similar. Bongo was waiting patiently for them. Justus had turned around and walked back. "You'll have plenty of time for shopping after the tour," said the alien. They continued on. After a few minutes, Karina realized some of the people in the throng weren't actually alive. At first she had thought Lakshmi Station held more than the average share of attractive folk. Several of the men and women they passed were head-turners. But when the next one came along, she noticed there was something not quite right about the way she looked. Her skin, eyes and hair were literally flawless, and her face and body were perfectly symmetrical. The other good-lookers were the same. These had to be the hosts and hostesses mentioned in the station's broadcasted advertising. Xiao had explained they were androids and what they were for, and it was then she'd decided Parthenia and the other kids shouldn't come to the station, at least not until she'd checked it out. In fact, so far it was tamer than she'd imagined, but they'd hardly seen any of it yet. She didn't want to take the risk of exposing them to things beyond their years, especially considering everything they'd been through. Mind massage, Xiao read from a sign. I wonder what that is. Externally induced meditation, said Bongo. It's pleasant, but nothing to write home about. Do you have SIM modules here? Jackson asked. The alien emitted a long stream of air from its 3 lower orifices, causing them to flap and vibrate noisily. The effect was something like laughing. Bongo had holes just for laughing. Do we have SIM modules? Sir, we have the best SIM modules in all Gerial sector. Military, romance, sensual, adventure, historical, futuristic, theological, whatever you can imagine. We have SIM modules that read your deepest fantasies and recreate them for you. And your worst nightmares too, though I wouldn't recommend that option. Cool, Jackson commented. After we figure out what we're doing about the armaments, said Xiao, we should get something to eat. I bet they have all kinds of weird, delicious stuff here. Probably, Karina replied. But we aren't here to have fun, remember? We have a job to do. The black dogs are expecting some R&R, said Jackson. They're in a state of nearly constant rest and recuperation on the ship, Karina protested. Who started that rumour? Said Xiao. I just assumed. Great, Karina muttered. She was beginning to feel like a mother in charge of a bunch of demanding, whiny offspring. Didn't the Mercs understand they were on a mission? It was a very long one, she had to admit, but the time for R&R would come later, after they'd reached Earth. I don't have any idea how many creds we'll get in exchange for the... She coughed as Bongo's head swiveled her way. Once we've bought the weapons and supplies, there might not be anything left over to spend on having fun. She felt bad. The Mercs had worked without pay for months. They'd joined her expedition to Earth mostly because they had no choice. It was either that or spend the rest of their lives hiding from vengeful Dirksons. She had come to see them as extended family, but in reality they were work-for-hire soldiers who were working for no compensation. An alien of the same species as Bongo approached through the crowd. As the two passed each other, they raised their legs and hit claws in a multiple high five. They entered a leisure and recreation area, which the alien insisted on showing them around, though Karina tried again to explain they weren't interested. Xiao and Jackson made a liar of her anyway, expressing great interest in every place Bongo took them, from the hosted lounges to the soaring rooms, where you could turn off the agrav and fly wearing wings. The latter seemed particularly silly. Aboard starships, losing agrav generally meant imminent disaster. Most of the entertainments were behind closed doors, which Karina was grateful for, though they did see one section open to the public, a hot spring lake, where bathers lounged and lazily swam. The creators had gone to a lot of trouble to make the place appear authentic, shipping in the rocks from a planet. The plants looked real too, from the tall ferns that overhung the water to the moss on the pebble shore. Finally, the obligatory tour of the recreation area was over, and Bongo took them to a currency exchange booth. There was only room for 3 people on the customer's side, or, as it turned out, 1 human and, whatever Bongo was. He crawled into the booth with Karina, and then no one else would fit. Shao, Jackson and Justus waited outside, peering in. Was it a set-up? Was she about to be ripped off? She decided to show the assistant only one of the gems and find out how much they were willing to offer before deciding whether to go ahead with the exchange. Another of Bongo's species stepped out through a curtain at the back of the booth. That explained why the counter was so low. It had to be a set-up. Bongo had brought her to a friend, relation or associate to fleece her. Was he even an official guide? The sack thing he was wearing didn't display any words or a logo. He spoke with the sales assistant using their mutual language. The sound reminded her of water running over rocks. "Hey," she said, "could you use Universal? I'd prefer to know what you're saying. I was explaining to my cousin you'd like to conduct a non-standard exchange. She wants to know what you're offering." "Cousin, huh?" With a sense of unease, Karina drew out her pouch and removed one of the gems before returning it to her pocket. Squatting down, she put the gem on the counter but kept her finger on it. A second round of bubbling dialogue ensued. She picked up the stone and folded it inside her palm. "Universal." "I apologize," said Bongo. "If that's what I think it is, it's the first time I've ever seen one in real life. My cousin doubts it's genuine and wants to check it for herself." "Yeah, but—" She couldn't think of a nicer way to put it. "How do I know your cousin isn't going to run off with it and disappear, or take it out the back and swap it for a fake?" "Wow," said Bongo's relative. "Rude much? If you don't trust me, you're welcome to take your business elsewhere." "Don't be a stupid," Bongo scolded, using a word from his language. "When are you going to see another Ember Gem?" His head swiveled toward Karina. "It's clear you're from a rougher part of the galaxy. What you have to understand about Lakshmi Station is that it's tightly regulated. Just last week, a cafe owner was found selling coffee from a printer as the genuine article. They spaced him." "Spaced?" Karina exclaimed, looking over her shoulder at her companions. "Yeah, spaced. What do you think they're going to do to my cousin if she tried to steal your gem?" Karina still couldn't believe him. He could be spinning her a tale. "The gem is real," she told the exchange owner. "Assuming I let you verify that, how much will you give me for it?" Bongo's cousin named a sum that would have made Karina's eyes pop if she hadn't been carefully trying to keep a neutral expression. She had made a similar exchange on Gog for starship fuel, and now she knew how badly she'd been screwed over. She wasn't going to make the same mistake again. Bongo had been babbling like a brook to his cousin, who replied at a louder volume. He upped the ante some more, rising to the tips of his claws to lean over the counter. Were they arguing? It appeared so, but really Karina didn't have a clue. He broke off abruptly and said, "We're going somewhere else." "Why?" "Because my cousin thinks she can retire early on a visitor's gullibility." He crawled out of the booth, and she was compelled to leave too. A stream of liquid utterances from his relative followed them. "Bongo," she said, trotting to catch up to the alien. "What's going on?" He halted, rocking on his many legs. His head rotated, each of his eyes scrutinizing her before he replied, "Not many of you humans are nice to us. I get that we remind you of a creature you don't like, but we have feelings, you know. Before, when you helped me to my feet, I was embarrassed, and I'm sorry I snapped. But I was touched by your gesture. It was a kind thing to do. To thank you, I want to get you the best deal I can, and my cousin wasn't going to give you it." He added as he set off again, "She always was a greedy bitch." Chapter 8. Since the Lotokrillon men had gone away, The Bathsheba seemed bigger and more mysterious than ever. Darius was tempted to ask Nala if he could hold her hand as they walked down the empty passageway, but he didn't want her to think he was a silly little kid. Instead, he held his elixir bottle more tightly. Like Nala had said, if anything bad happened, he could easily transport them back to their suite.
Where are we going? Deck 0?
He hadn't known there was a Deck 0.
What's down there?
You'll see. She gave him a quick, excited smile. Nala loved knowing things other people didn't. That was why she spent so long reading stuff in the ship's database and translating the mage papers. She had kept the knowledge of the Ember Gems to herself for ages, actually took them and kept them until the others knew about them. Ordinarily, that would have been bad. It was wrong to steal. But it had all turned out okay in the end, and Nala hadn't been punished. Maybe it was all right to steal from bad people like Lomang. A shiver ran through him. Lomang's feelings had been thick, dark treacle, strong and full of wants. They arrived at the elevator. When they stepped inside, Nala told it to take them to Deck 1. Darius protested,
"But you said the elevators don't go all the way to the bottom. Why not? I think they used to, then someone changed them. Why would they do that? That's what I want to find out."
The elevator pinged and the doors opened.
"I'm not sure we should be doing this,"
Darius said uneasily as they stepped out.
"There has to be a reason the elevators were fixed so they don't go to Deck 0. What if something's living down there?"
"Nothing's living down there."
"How do you know?"
"Because it would need food and water."
"Maybe it has food and water. If it has the whole deck to itself, it could keep enough food and water to last a lifetime."
Nala didn't like this answer. Her annoyance spread out from her in ripples.
"There's nothing living down there. Why would something choose to live there and never come out? We've been aboard the ship for months and no one's ever seen anything. It might only come out during the quiet shift when hardly anyone's about. It might come out and take what it needs from our supplies."
Her sharp anger stabbed at him.
"Do you want to come with me or not?"
"Yes," he replied. Now he'd had time to think about it. He wasn't sure he did. But if he didn't, Nala would go there by herself. And if he told on her, he would be breaking his promise. And she probably wouldn't play with him for weeks. Then he wouldn't have anyone to play with.
"But if we see something's living there, we have to leave right away. We won't look to find out what it is. We'll tell a grown-up."
"Yeah, okay." Her mood calmed, and he felt its cool draft. Walking along the passageway on Deck 1, he wanted to hold her hand more than ever. Hardly anyone came down here. Old broken equipment that couldn't be fixed was stored here for spare parts, as well as things kept just in case, like out-of-date medications and supplies. The place had a creepy, neglected feeling. Even though he knew it couldn't really feel anything and was just his imagination, Nala stopped at a hatch.
"We have to climb down the rest of the way."
It was a service tunnel for techs to use when the elevators didn't work or they had to reach something they couldn't get at any other way. A metal ladder led down into darkness.
"Lights will come on when they sense us in the tunnel,"
said Nala.
"Okay,"
Darius replied nervously.
"I'll go first. Do you have somewhere to put your elixir?"
Darn it, he hadn't brought a bag with him.
"I didn't know I'd have to use 2 hands. Can you tuck it in your waistband?" "I guess so, whatever you do,"
said Nala with a grin.
"Don't drop it on my head."
She climbed into the hatch and onto the ladder. He peered down at the top of her receding head. Lights lit up the tunnel, just like she'd said. He pushed his bottle into the top of his pants. He shouldn't be doing this. He wished Karina was here. When he reached the bottom, he half expected to find Nala standing in the dark. but the lights worked the same as everywhere else. She said. The Sanobots certainly know about Deck Zero. The place looked like the rest of the ship. He wasn't sure what he'd been expecting. Dust, cobwebs. But it was kinda disappointing in a way. Maybe there isn't anything special here. The people who owned the ship decided one day they didn't need this deck, so they closed it off. That has to be the most boring explanation I ever heard. There has to be a better reason than that. Let's explore. She strode off, and he had to hurry to catch up to her, while also taking the elixir bottle out of his pants. It looked like their expedition was going to be perfectly safe, but he still clutched the bottle tightly, just in case. The first room they came to was stuffed with piles of clothes. The many-coloured garments were stacked high, higher than he or Nala could reach. She grabbed the edge of something and pulled. "Don't do that," Darius warned. Too late. The pile toppled over, right on top of her. She screamed, but in a giggling, happy way. She'd fallen down, and when she stood up, she was holding on to the piece of clothing she'd pulled out. It was a sparkly dress. Nala held it up to her chest. The dress was much too long and wide to fit her. It was for an adult. "Look at me," she commanded. "I'm a beautiful lady." Fern and Oriana would love this. There are all kinds of clothes here. We should choose some to take back with us. He looked around, wondering what they should take. Oh! The dress had fallen from her fingers, or rather most of it had. She was holding a straggly bit of it between her hands. She dropped it, and reaching down, she tried to pick up the fallen pieces, but they dissolved into tiny fragments. She pushed a hand into the mound on the floor. It collapsed into dust. "These clothes must be really old," Darius remarked. "Yeah, they must." Nala frowned, like she always did when she was thinking hard. "I hope that's all it is." "What do you mean?" She brushed the remnants of material from her hands and then brought them up to her face to look at them closely. Then she looked at him. "Do you feel okay?" "Yeah, I think so." Now that she asked, he wasn't sure he did. Or was that only because she'd asked him? "Maybe we should go." "Maybe, but—" She kicked the dusty pile. "Let's explore just a little bit more. Once we tell the others about this place, I bet they'll never let us come here alone again. We should take our chance while we can." "All right, but just a few more rooms. Then we'll leave. If we don't go back soon, the others will wonder what's happened to us. And Fern is waiting for his snacks." "Okay, just a few more rooms." Chapter 9. Holding her wrist under the scanner, Karina grimaced. Not that being scanned to enter the bar, the Mystic Supernova, was painful. It didn't hurt at all. Her pain was internal. She'd discovered that, when she'd bought the starship fuel on Gog, she'd been royally swindled. She was also deeply pissed off at Justus. He'd been with her when she'd made the transaction. How could he not have known the value of the Ember Gems? His dad had been a trader for Star's sake. Why hadn't he said something? Xiao must have seen her expression as she whispered, "It's not a big deal, Karina. Get over it. We got a great price for the gems, and we won't have to skimp on updates to the Bathsheba. Let's relax and have a good time." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one responsible for the only money they had and everyone's safety on the journey to Earth. 3 Ember Gems, she hissed back. I paid 3 whole gems just to fill up the tanks. I can't believe I was so stupid. She imagined the Gogian fuel supplier laughing at her behind her back. She had only one compensation. The gems she'd given the Magogian ground dwellers would easily buy enough weapons and equipment to overthrow their dark mage masters. You weren't stupid, said Xiao. maintaining her quiet tone as they were allowed through the security check. "How were you supposed to know?" "But Justus should have known and told me. The gems are only found on his planet. Of all people, he should know." "That isn't always the way, though, is it? The Lotokrillans are the wholesalers. They don't control the point of sale price, and they might not even know how much their export fetches in other parts of the sector. Justus said he wasn't from around here, didn't he? The station doesn't have him on its database." It was a fair point. "What does it matter anyway?" Xiao went on. "What's done is done. We have plenty left to get exactly what we need, and everyone can have some fun too. I'd call that a win." "Yeah," Karina grudgingly conceded. "I suppose so." The volume of ambient noise increased as the doors opened, and Justus and Jackson joining them, they stepped into the bar. Wide stairs led down to an open space filled with people and dotted with bar islands. "Just a couple of drinks," she announced. "Then back to the Bathsheba. I want a good night's sleep before starting negotiations tomorrow." The remaining 4 Ember Gems were exchanged and the creds deposited into an account, but she still had to decide how best to use them to fortify the colony ship against attack. The armament vendors had given a wide, varied range of options, and, as well as sleeping on it, she wanted to discuss the choices with the others. A slide ran down to the lower level, next to the stairs. She had thought it was a gimmick, but as she began to walk down the steps, a long creature slid past her on its belly, slim tentacle-like legs held high. When it reached the bottom, it slithered into the crowd. "The kids are going to have fun at Lakshmi," said Jackson. "They aren't coming here," she replied. "Not the little ones, at least." "Oh, come on. You have to let them come to the station. When are they going to get another chance to see all the cool aliens? You could introduce them to Bongo." Bongo had become somewhat of a friend while he'd been taking them to the currency exchanges and then on to the Starship armament vendors. Karina was fairly certain his job only required him to show them the basics and then leave them to their own devices. Yet he'd gone above and beyond and had offered to be their guide again when they returned. "Bongo is one thing," she said. "What I'm not sure about is all the other things, especially the sex bots." "Hosts and hostesses," Jackson corrected. "Right," she replied, rolling her eyes. "Hosts and hostesses." "So we only have to show them our ID codes?" asked Justus, his eyes bright with excitement. "Yeah," Karina said. "But—" He disappeared into the crowd. "Take it easy," she finished. "Don't worry," said Xiao. "He can't drink the budget. He won't even make a tiny dent in it. That's not what I'm worried about." She didn't want him getting himself into trouble. The story of the cafe owner who'd been spaced indicated there could be dire consequences for stepping out of line. Just then a man loomed up. He was almost as big as Papu, and he thrust his chest out aggressively. "What planet?" he demanded. "Huh?" she asked. "It's a simple question," he sneered drunkenly. "What planet are you from?" The long day, annoyance at being duped over the Ember Gems, guilt at being forced to exclude Parthenia again, and the stress of needing to make the best choices to defend the ship had all been getting to her before Justus had run off. Unprovoked hostility from this goon pushed her over the edge. "What planet are you from?" she spat back. "The war, remember?" said Jackson softly. "He wants to know what side we're on." "This section's only for Quintonese," slurred the man. "You're not from there, are you? Leave, now, before I help you on your way." "No, we're not Quintonese," she declared, rearing up and glaring at him. "And we're not from Martron or the other side of your goddamned conflict, whatever the hell it's called. We're from Out Sector, and we're here to have a quiet drink. So get out of my face!" "Selan," said another bar patron, pulling on the big guy's arm. "You'll get yourself thrown out. Leave 'em alone." "Yeah, leave us alone, Selan." "Karina," said Shao. "Cool it." The drunk grinned lopsidedly.
"It's okay. I thought you were Marchonish. Your clothes are funny, but a Marchonish wouldn't have those balls."
His companions succeeded in pulling him away. Selan staggered off. Jackson's heavy prosthetic hand landed on Karina's shoulders.
"What were you saying to Justice? Something about taking it easy."
"Karina has balls," joked Shao. "Who knew?"
"Bryce, probably,"
said Jackson. "Let's get that drink," Shao said. "Someone needs to calm down." Chapter 10. When they returned to the Bathsheba, Bryce was waiting for them at the airlock. He was pale and sweaty, and he looked at Karina with dread in his eyes. Before she could ask him what was wrong, he said,
"I need to talk to you."
He took her to one side while Shao, Jackson, and a somewhat unsteady Justice passed them by, walking into the ship.
"I'm not sure how to put this."
In all the time she had known him, and through all the life-threatening situations they'd faced, she had never seen him looking so scared. "Stars, just say it! You're worrying the hell out of me." He swallowed.
"We can't find Darius or Nala."
"What?" A wave of icy fear hit. "What do you mean you can't find them?"
"They left their suite about an hour after lunch, saying they were just popping out to get snacks, but they didn't come back. Oriana and Fern didn't notice until a couple of hours later. They were too engrossed in what they were doing, and Parthenia didn't leave her room until the alarm was raised. Everyone's been looking for them ever since, but there's no trace of them."
She felt numb. The mood in the Peregrine on the journey back had been so good. The visit to Lakshmi Station had been a great success. They had an account fat with creds and access to the best defensive tech the sector had to offer. They would be able to sleep peacefully the rest of the way to Earth, safe and secure. But none of it meant anything if something bad had happened to her brother or sister. A realization broke through the tide of terror rising in her heart, creating an overwhelming sense of relief. "It's fine. I'll just cast Locate." She reached for her elixir bottle. "I don't know why Parthenia and the twins didn't think of it. Darius and Nala are probably hiding somewhere, enjoying the idea of us searching for them. You know what little kids are like."
"They tried that. Oriana, Fern, and Parthenia. They've all tried it over and over again. I told you, we can't find them."
"They can't find them with Locate? That's not possible. Even if they were," she couldn't bring herself to say it, "Locate would always find them."
"Unless they were out of range. That's what Parthenia said."
"Yes, but—" Her mind was whirring. She couldn't think straight. How far did Locate operate? The Bathsheba hasn't changed position since we left, has she?
"No, or if she has, it's just a little from gravitational effects."
"Then the only way Darius and Nala could move out of range would be—" "Karina!" It was Oriana. She ran down the passageway and hugged Karina tightly. Her eyes were red in her puffy face. "We can't find them! We tried everything! We looked and looked! I'm so glad you're back! Can you think of something else we can do? There has to be something else!" She was gazing up hopefully. Karina tried to look calm. In truth, she was barely holding it together herself. It was up to her to be strong, to figure out a solution, to find the way out of a sticky situation again. But she had nothing. She had no idea what could have happened to her little sister or brother, or how to find out where they'd gone. Fern and Oriana appeared. Fern's expression was downcast, and Parthenia looked like Karina felt, utterly distraught. "Let me think," Karina said. "I need to think." She began to walk, though she had no destination in mind. "I'm sorry," said Parthenia. "I should have been watching them."
"No," said Bryce. "It's my fault. I should have stayed in the suite with you guys."
"It's nobody's fault," said Karina. "Neither of you could be expected to watch all the kids every second. They're old enough to look after themselves, and they should be smart enough to not put themselves in danger." "They should be," muttered Parthenia. "No other ship has approached while I was gone?" It was a dumb question. Bryce would have told her if that was the case, but she had to get the possibility of a kidnapping out of the way.
"Absolutely not. Bibic and I searched all the scanner data 3 times. Nothing has come anywhere near the Bathsheba except the Peregrine. Even if a ship could avoid scanner detection somehow, the computer would have registered an airlock opening. There's been nothing, not even a garbage evacuation."
"So they can't have left the ship, which means they must be here somewhere, and that means they must be in range to locate." She halted and swung toward Parthenia and the twins. "Is it possible your elixir is the problem?" "I made it the other day," Parthenia replied defensively. "I've never got it wrong before." "Okay, but let me try with mine. It's from an earlier batch. Does anyone have something of the kids to use?" "I have some of Nala's hair from her brush and Darius's playing cards," said Oriana, taking them out of her pocket and handing them over. Karina walked to the bulkhead and leaned her back on it. She unscrewed the lid on her bottle, and holding Nala and Darius's personal items in one hand, took a swig. Closing her eyes, she concentrated. Casting under pressure was hard. It required focus, which was nearly impossible to achieve when you were worried something terrible had happened to the people you loved. She pushed away the black cloud of fear and went down into her mind. Locate was a 7-stroke character. Carefully, she wrote each glowing stroke in the darkness and sent it out. She waited. If the cast worked, she would soon begin to sense her siblings, bright spots in the grey field of mental space. Time stretched out, measured by each thump of her anxious heart. She continued to wait, longer than she should have. Past the moment she knew, deep down, she had failed. Tears filled her eyes as she finally opened them. Unable to speak, she shook her head. The 4 mages and Bryce stood silently in the passageway. A flash of hope hit, though as she spoke she realized it was irrational. "What about Jace? Has he tried to cast for them?" "He tried many times," Parthenia replied. "He gave up and joined one of the search parties." Despair descended again. If Jace could not locate them, no one could. Only Darius was a better mage.
"Has casting ever not worked for you before?"
asked Bryce. "Plenty of times, when I was a kid and learning. But you can sort of feel if you did it wrong. Even if that wasn't so, it isn't possible that we're all doing it wrong. It can only mean they aren't here, and searching for them is pointless." Another idea occurred. Did the scanners pick up anything strange? Is it possible the Bathsheba was hit by something similar to what killed Lomang and Mezban?
"We checked for that too. There was nothing out of the ordinary the whole time you were gone."
"They have to be here!" she exclaimed. "I can't explain why we can't locate them, but they must be somewhere on the ship." She didn't add the final part of the sentence that sprang to her mind, dead or alive.
"If they're here," said Bryce, "we'll find them eventually. The Bathsheba's big, but she isn't infinite. We won't stop looking until we've found them."
"Do you two remember exactly where they said they were going?" Karina asked Fern and Oriana. "All they said was they were going to get something to eat," Fern replied, "which to me meant the galley on our deck." "If they wanted something that wasn't there," Oriana chipped in, They would only have to go to the printer on the deck below. They should only have been gone half an hour at most. But it took us longer than that to notice they hadn't come back." As she spoke, her cheeks flushed. "Look," said Karina, "I don't want any of you to blame yourselves." Yet she could empathise. What had happened wasn't her fault either, but she couldn't help feeling somehow it was. They must have gone to another place. How could they have gone missing between your suite and the galley or the printer? There's nothing dangerous in those areas, not even an airlock. They had to be going somewhere different, and they didn't want to tell you because they knew you would try to stop them. "That does sound like something Nala would do," Oriana agreed. "I love her, but she can be sneaky." "And Darius would go along with it because he wanted to please her," said Parthenia. "He wants to keep everyone happy." "That's right," Karina agreed. There was no need to state the reason Darius needed the people around him to be happy. What were they doing before they left? "Playing cards," Fern replied. "The cards were on the bed when we looked into their room to check they hadn't come back without us noticing." His answer was no help. She couldn't see how playing cards could have led the two children to lie and go somewhere forbidden. "Has anyone checked Nala's interface?" "I did," said Fern. "But there was no activity on it for the last couple of days." "Doesn't sound like Nala," Bryce commented. "I checked it too. He's right. There's no way she didn't use her interface recently. She must have wiped the history to cover something up. What about the ship's database? Anyone check what she's been doing on that?" Chapter 11. The old schematic of the ship Nala had been looking at before she disappeared showed an extra deck that didn't exist on the more recent plan. Deck 0. Why had its existence been hidden? Karina couldn't think of any good reason why the ship's previous occupants would want to make a secret of an entire deck. She peered down the service tunnel at Deck 1. It disappeared into darkness, but that was innocuous. The lights were probably motion-activated the same as everywhere else. "They're down there!" Oriana exclaimed, leaning over Karina's shoulder. "They have to be!" She launched herself at the opening, but Karina grabbed her and held her back. She understood the impulse. There was nothing more she wanted to do herself than to shoot down the ladder and find her siblings. "Let me go!" yelled Oriana. "She's right," said Bryce. "Hold on, we need to be careful. We don't know what's down there. If it's only another deck, why haven't Darius and Nala come back yet?" Fear and anxiety gnawed at Karina. Stupid, stupid kids! If they were okay, she would ground them for a month. If they were okay. "What worries me most is we can't locate them," she said. "The only thing that can block a cast is another mage, but usually you would feel it being blocked. I didn't feel a thing when I cast earlier." Bryce asked, "You're sure it would work, even if they're—" "Yes," she snapped, then immediately regretted it. He loved those kids as much as she did. "Yes," she repeated more softly, touching his arm. "No matter what's happened to them, it would work. Except—" She remembered cremating Ma's body in a shuttle engine's flare. You couldn't locate someone if there was nothing left of them. She calmed Jackson. "Bring 5 black dogs and pulse rifles to Deck 1, ASAP." "Pulse rifles?" asked Fern. "What do you think is down there?" She turned to Bryce. "Could some of the Lotokrillans have re-entered after you spaced them? It would be a miracle, but I have to admit I didn't check the logs. I don't know if any of the other airlocks were activated." "Could we be carrying Lotokrillan stowaways?" asked Parthenia. "If the Lotokrillans do have Darius and Nala," asked Oriana, "why haven't they said anything? They would have asked for a ransom or, I don't know. It just seems weird they would keep quiet about it." Karina could think of a dark reason why the men might have said nothing. They might be perfectly content with their situation, moving around the ship during the quiet shift, stealing enough food to survive, waiting for an opportunity to sneak away, waiting until everyone went into deep sleep. Then they could take over the ship and fly wherever they wanted. All they would have to do to ensure they never met any opposition was to turn off the stasis system. If her guess was correct, the arrival of Darius and Nala would have thrown a spanner in the works. It would be in the Lotokrillans' interest to silence the children permanently. The elevator doors opened and 6 black dogs emerged in full armor and armed. "You suited up," said Karina. "Good idea." One of them replied, his helmet comm switched to external. "No harm in being cautious." It was Jackson. He peered into the service tunnel hatch and whistled. "You think the kids are down there?" "Yeah, and I think they might not be alone." "It'll be a tight fit in our suits, but I think we can do it." "I'm coming too." "I didn't bring a spare rifle." "I have my elixir. I'll be okay." "Better to let," ventured Bryce. Karina gave him a hard stare, and he didn't finish his sentence. "Let's go. We've wasted enough time." Jackson managed to persuade her to allow himself and the other black dogs to climb down the service ladder first. After the last merc had entered the hatch, she followed. As she descended, she listened for sounds of fighting, but there was nothing. At the bottom, she climbed out into a passageway the same as the others on the ship, empty except for the mercs. "Karina," said Jackson, "you've got to leave. My HUD's reporting low O2. "Huh?" "Get back up the ladder, or you'll be unconscious within a couple of minutes." "But—" "I don't want to carry you and those kids. Leave, now." With great reluctance, she returned to deck 1. By the time she'd reached the top of the ladder, she'd begun to feel a little woozy. She climbed out and sat with her back to the bulkhead. "Did you find them?" asked Oriana excitedly. "No, I had to come back because the oxygen's low down there. It was lucky Jackson suited up. His HUD warned him." "So that's why Darius and Nala didn't come back," said Bryce. She shared a look with him. "What does it mean?" asked Fern. "It means there aren't any stowaway Lotokrillans," said Karina. Oriana exhaled heavily. "Thank goodness for that!" "But if you came back right away," said Parthenia, "that means the atmosphere must be really dangerous if you aren't wearing armor." "Let's wait and see what the mercs find." Karina was holding it together the best she could. She didn't want to lose hope or upset her siblings by showing how she really felt, but a scene kept playing through her mind. She could see Jackson emerging from the hatch, carrying Darius in his arms, lifeless. Another merc appeared carrying Nala, her body limp, her skin blue, her chest still. She sank her head into her hands. Bryce sat beside her and put his arm around her shoulders. Seconds crawled past as they waited. Her confusion about why the locate cast hadn't worked didn't matter anymore. All she could do was hope the inevitable wasn't true. It couldn't be true. "Someone's coming," Fern announced. She leapt up and leaned in next to her brother at the open hatch. She saw the top of a helmet. A child's form rested over the merc's shoulder. "He's got Darius! They found him!" Karina backed out and pulled Fern with her. "We have to make room." She took the lid off her elixir and put the bottle down, ready to cast heal. When the merc reached the level of the hatch, she called out, "I'll take him!" and reached into the tunnel to lift Darius off the man's shoulder. She laid the small figure down. He was so tiny. "Is he breathing?" whispered Parthenia. Darius was deathly pale. Karina put her ear against his chest. The thump of his heart sounded. It was quiet and slow, but it was there. A dam broke within her and tears flooded her eyes. "He's alive!" Distantly she heard Oriana announce, "They've got Nala too! Heal her, Parthenia." She was already sipping elixir. She placed a hand on Darius's chest and squeezed her eyes shut. With a great effort, she managed to control her ragged emotions and cast heal. She opened her eyes, expecting her sweet brother's eyes to open soon too. They did not. Nothing had changed. He remained unconscious and just as pale. She thrust her ear against his chest again. His heart beat at the same slow rate. Next to her, Parthenia had done the same. "It isn't working!" her sister wailed over Nala's motionless form. "Why isn't it working?" Chapter 12. Karina's understanding of the dreadful situation was confirmed by Jace later in the sick bay. Before he mentioned the problem, however, he asked how Darius and Nala were doing. "They're alive," she replied, her throat tight. "That's the main thing. The doc says it's going to be hard to tell how the oxygen deprivation has affected their brains until they wake up. She's put them under sedation to help them recover. We'll know more tomorrow. The children looked better than they had when they'd been found." As they lay in the sick bay beds with oxygen masks on their faces, their skin was pink and plump. But they'd been unconscious for hours, the oxygen-depleted atmosphere slowly sapping them of life. Black Dog medics had hooked them up to life sign monitors, which displayed their steady heartbeats, respiration, blood pressure, and other figures. The screens provided the brightest light in the quiet room. "I heard they were found on a deck no one knew existed," Jace asked, sitting down. "Deck 0. It must have been abandoned decades ago. The Bathsheba is centuries old, and at some point the atmosphere management system began to struggle to maintain safe oxygen levels down there. Whoever was running the ship closed the deck off. I doubt even Lomang knew about it." "But why isn't there a warning somewhere?" "There is, on the computer. But the database is in the original colonist script, remember? Some of it is converted to Universal now, but not all of it. Nala must have found out about Deck 0, but she didn't fully understand what she was reading." "No signs outside the service hatches?" She shrugged. "There are no signs anywhere on the ship. Maybe the colonists didn't use them, or they were taken down. Who knows? It doesn't matter now." Jace ran a hand through his hair. "Thank the stars they didn't die." She nodded. "According to the doc, they wouldn't have lasted much longer if we hadn't found them." Then Jace brought up the second awful event on both their minds. He said quietly, "You tried casting heal, didn't you?" It was a statement, not a question. She nodded again. The suffocating blanket of alarm and fear she'd been feeling tightened around her. "It didn't work, right?" She shook her head. There was nothing else to say. "I've tried them all," he went on. "Every cast I know. Rise, fire, break, obscure, transport, lock, and the rest." "None of them worked?" "Not one." She had tried to lock the sickbay door and cast Rise on the water in the beaker next to Darius's bed. These were simple casts a mage child could do. Her experience mirrored Jace's. A pause stretched out as the significance of their failures expanded. "Have you ever heard of this happening before?" she asked.
"Never."
He met her gaze.
"You remember Magda?"
Of course. How could she ever forget the old spirit mage?
"I listened to all her stories. I never heard a single one about mages losing their abilities."
She stroked the back of Darius's hand. What did it mean? She had never imagined there might be a time she could no longer cast. Mages retained their abilities until death, only losing the capacity in old age in the same way that old people's minds didn't work so well. Even with the evidence staring her in the face, she couldn't imagine no longer being able to cast. She couldn't wrap her head around it. Her ability was part of her, like talking, eating, and walking. Losing it felt like having a limb sawn off. Do you have any idea what might have happened?
I'm as much in the dark as you. How have Parthenia and the others taken it?
While we were waiting for the medics, we realized that might be why no one had been able to locate Darius and Nala, that it was because the casts hadn't been working. Then the medics arrived and, after that, it's all a blur, honestly. I was so worried the kids were going to... Jace put a hand on her back. I calmed Parthenia to tell her what the doc had said, but I haven't spoken to her or anyone else since. I don't know how they're doing. Bryce is with them.
Would you like me to talk to them?
Please. Bryce loves them like his own, but he isn't a mage. He won't understand what this means or how they'll be feeling.
I'm not sure I do myself yet. It's hard to take in.
You can say that again. He rose to his feet.
Darius and Nala were found alive. That's something to be grateful for. Tomorrow will bring us more good news, hopefully. They're young and healthy, and that will help with their recovery.
That's what the doc said, and today I discovered the Ember Gems are worth an absolute fortune. If I have to use it all to pay for medical treatment at Lakshmi Station, I will.
There are hospitals there?
They have everything there. She sighed. I was so happy when I got back, looking forward to telling everyone about our good luck and deciding the best ways to protect the ship. And then this happens. She looked up at her towering friend. Do you think it might only be temporary, that we'll get our abilities back?
Your guess is as good as mine. If it had happened after you'd returned from your trip, I would have wondered if you brought back a virus that had infected us. But the effect began earlier than that. My locate casts didn't work while you were gone. To find out whether the problem is temporary, we need to discover what's causing it. And at the moment I don't have any ideas. But I'll think about it. That's all we can do.
That and get used to being normal.
You said it. I'll go and talk to the kids.
Normality. To be like 99.9% of the rest of humanity. It was a weird feeling. There had been many times she'd considered her magehood to be more of a curse than a benefit. It had caused so much pain in her life. Ma had suffered years of torment due to it, and for Karina herself it had meant living with loneliness and constant fear of discovery. Yet it was also a fundamental part of her identity, like the colour of her eyes or her interest in bugs. It was who she was. If she could never cast again, she would feel like a different person. And what did it mean in terms of the journey to Earth? The reason she wanted to go there was to try to find a home where her family could live safely. She hoped things were different there now, thousands of years after mages had departed. But if none of them was a mage anymore, was there any point in making the long voyage? Might it not be better to find a quiet backwater planet and live out their lives like regular people? Chapter 13. Karina was in a long dark tunnel. The air was humid and stuffy, and thick cobwebs stretched from wall to wall. She turned, trying to find a way out. At one end was impenetrable darkness, at the other a pinprick of light shone. How had she come to be here? She couldn't remember. All she knew was she had to get out. She pushed through a sticky web, breaking it apart. Thick threads clung to her face and hair as she walked toward the light. She tried to pull them away, but they stuck to her skin and trailed behind her. Another web and another effort to break it and pass through. At this one, something unseen scuttled away along the ceiling. The spot of light grew larger. She was hot, sweating in the still, warm air. Her legs were already growing weary, though she didn't think she'd gone very far. Perhaps this was a high-G planet. She did feel heavier than usual. Or maybe there was something different about the air. It felt thick and syrupy. Figures were moving in the light, silhouetted by its brightness. They were moving toward her slowly, shuffling. She could see 3 distinctly, but there might be even more behind, judging from the grey shadows in the brilliance. She turned and looked back. Might it be better to retreat into the dark? But what lay that way was unknown. The least she could expect was more of the webs and the creatures who had made them. She went on. As the light increased, it grew softer. A cool wind blew from the same direction, drying her sweat. She could make out the first figure. It was a woman wearing a dress that fell to her feet, her long hair arranged carefully on her head. Karina gasped, "Ma!" She ran into her arms and hugged the thin woman tightly. She felt so small, so frail. Karina was frightened she might hurt her. She let go and stared into her mother's deep brown eyes. "What are you doing here? Are you okay?" Ma didn't answer, only smiled sweetly and pointed behind her. Ba was here too. He raised a hand in greeting, but before Karina could run to him, she saw someone else she recognized farther down the tunnel. Hobbling forward, hunched over by age and long years of gathering semi-precious stones, was Nai. Tears sprang to Karina's eyes. She couldn't believe it. Here were 3 people who meant so much to her. Who to speak to first? She hadn't seen Ba since she was 3 years old, and Nai had raised her, dedicating her life to protecting her and teaching her how to be a mage. Then she saw the others. Behind Nai walked ranks of other people, all appearing familiar. She could see Nai's, Ba's, and Ma's features in their faces. These were her ancestors, going back down the ages. Mages who had lived before her in different places and on other planets across the galaxy, all the way back for thousands of years to the people who had fled Earth. "Karina," said a quiet, high-pitched voice. She opened her eyes. She was sitting down, bent forward, resting her upper body on a bed, Darius's sick-bay bed. She sat up. He was awake and watching her. "Were you dreaming?" "I think I was. How are you feeling, sweetheart?" He looked healthy, and the fact he'd spoken to her was a good sign. "I thought you were dreaming. You were talking. I think you said Nai." "I was dreaming about our family." The family who had been mages for hundreds of generations. Was the line going to stop with her and her siblings? "How are you?" She stroked his hair. "I've been so worried about you." He began to cry. "I'm sorry I was bad." "Hey," she said softly. "It's okay. We found you. That's the most important thing. What do you remember?" "I was with Nala on Deck 0 and—" He sat bolt upright. "Where is she? Is she—" "She's still asleep." Nala's unconscious form hadn't moved while they'd been talking. The sickbay door slid open and a medic appeared. "How are my young patients?" he asked cheerfully, adding, "One's awake, I see. Excellent. He seems to have fully recovered." "I certainly hope so. You are looking chipper, young man. If your sister would kindly step outside, I'll do some checks." "No," Darius protested. I want Karina to stay. It'll be fine. It's just for a few minutes, right?
That's all.
The medic leaned down and fake whispered in Darius's ear.
And I have candy Karina wouldn't approve of.
Darius giggled. I'll see you soon, said Karina, stepping out. While she waited, she rested her back on the bulkhead and folded her arms. Closing her eyes, she wished she could send to Parthenia to tell her Darius was awake and was apparently okay. She could calm her, of course, but there was something special about casting send. It was a more emotional, meaningful act, in the same way an embrace felt different from hearing the words, I love you. And casting was something that drew them together. All that appeared to be gone now, perhaps forever. If she couldn't cast, she would need to learn a new way of being, like learning to walk again. She calmed Bryce. Fantastic, he said, when she told him her brother seemed okay.
I haven't slept all night, worrying.
Guilt niggled at her. She had left Bryce to look after her siblings again. She relied on him so much.
How about Nala?
She hasn't woken up yet. There's a medic in with both of them at the moment. I'll see what he says, but if Darius is all right, I think Nala must be too.
Good. Let me know, okay?
Of course. What's been happening there? He paused before answering.
Jace came over to talk to the kids.
He paused again.
They haven't taken the news they've lost their mage abilities very well.
Neither have I. I guess it's only to be expected. It's a big shock for all of us. I never imagined this could happen.
It's a bummer, but it isn't that big a disaster, is it? You're all still healthy.
It's more than a bummer, Bryce. I don't think you really understand what this means to us.
You're right. It is hard for me to understand. Oriana hasn't stopped crying since Jace told her, and Fern's acting like he's just got hit by a truck. Parthenia hasn't left her room, though to be fair she hasn't left it much at all lately. Is it so bad to be an ordinary non-mage person like me?
No, but...
What?
I'm sorry, I can't explain right now. The medic emerged from the sickbay room. I'll talk to you soon, she told Bryce before cutting the comm. What did you find out? The man's expression stopped her heart. They're going to be okay, right?
I performed cognitive function checks on Darius, and he doesn't seem to be suffering any major impairments.
The medic looked down for a second before continuing.
Nala woke up while I was working with her brother, so I ran the basic tests on her as well. The doc will be along soon to run more advanced checks, but it seems clear the hypoxia has caused some brain damage.
What? What kind of brain damage?
She's suffering memory loss, and her gross motor skills have been affected. We'll be able to tell you more after the doctor's seen her.
No! Poor Nala!
It's still early days. We'll begin treatment right away and do everything we can to help her regain her abilities.
Will she ever be the same again?
It's hard for me to say,
he replied, though his tone implied he was only trying to be kind.
The doctor will be able to give you a prognosis for her recovery.
Thanks. Can I see them now?
Go ahead.
Chapter 14. At last, said Parthenia sarcastically, a gathering I'm invited to. Karina bit back an equally acid reply. They were facing their greatest challenges yet, and her eldest sister had to make it about her.
A very important gathering,
said Jace.
Let's get started.
Karina had invited the older mage to the kids' suite to lead the discussion on what they would do to face the latest developments. Bryce was present as well as the mages and Nala, who had curled into Jace's side on the sofa, sucking her thumb. It was hard to look at her. Nala had sucked her thumb sometimes in the earliest days Karina had known her. It wasn't hard to guess why the little girl had retained the baby habit. Her father had been a monster, and their dark mage brother, Castiel, had mercilessly manipulated and later tortured her. What was harder to understand was the amazing resilience and adaptability she had shown as soon as she was free of these two terrible influences. The thumb-sucking had stopped as the little girl bloomed. Nala had developed into a very smart, savvy child, despite all the trauma she'd endured, and her discovery of the Ember Gems had saved them all. Now her little escapade had resulted in brain damage that was probably irreversible. According to the doctor, she had lost a lot of memories and cognitive ability, leaving her with the mental capacity of a child half her age. She also struggled with walking, using a knife and fork, and operating an interface. When the doc had shown her a screen, she hadn't even seemed to understand what it was. She could still speak, but with a limited vocabulary. With treatment, the doc had said, she should make some progress, but it was most likely she would never return to the sparky, quick-witted youngster she had once been. The advanced tests on Darius had revealed he'd escaped his sister's fate, possibly due to his younger age or another factor they didn't understand. His brain seemed unaffected.
"Do you know why this has happened to us, Jace?" Oriana asked plaintively. "Why can't we cast any more?"
It was a pointless question. Everyone knew what he would say, but Oriana appeared to hope if she asked again, she might get a different answer.
"I'm sorry," he replied patiently. "I don't know."
"Which means," said Fern, "we might get our ability back. If we've randomly lost the ability to cast, we could randomly regain it." "Being a mage isn't random," said Karina. "It's genetic. That's what I always guessed, and we found out for sure on Magog. They knew we were mages after taking DNA samples." "Then has something gone wrong with our genetic code? Can that happen?" "I talked to the doctor. He said space radiation damages DNA, but the ship's hull and the EVA suits protect us from it. And if there had been a radiation breach, alarms would have sounded."
"True,"
said Bryce.
"Anyway, Karina, you were away when whatever's happened to you all happened. If it was due to radiation on the Bathsheba, you wouldn't have been affected. Are we sure it happened while Karina was visiting Lakshmi Station?"
asked Jace.
"We didn't notice the effect until we were searching for Darius and Nala, but we could have lost our abilities prior to that. It will help to pinpoint the event if we all try to remember the last time we cast successfully."
Karina thought back. It was hard to bring to mind the last cast she'd made. She definitely hadn't done any casting at Lakshmi for fear of being noticed. Before that, she frowned.
"It's so hard," said Oriana. "I don't do it very much anymore. There's no need to cast on a starship where everything's close at hand and all we do is mess around all day."
"I remember," said Parthenia.
"I cast Locate 5 days ago for something I'd lost.
It worked then."
"So," said Jace, "sometime in the last 5 days, we all lost our mage ability."
Silence settled over the room. Nala snuggled closer to Jace, who wrapped a protective arm around her.
"I know it must be hard for you all," said Bryce, "but looking at it over the long term, does it really matter? Karina, you've told me so many times how hard it is to be a mage, always living in fear of discovery, facing the threat of slavery and torture. If this thing that's happened is permanent, you aren't at risk anymore. No one has a reason to capture or hurt you. Surely that's a good thing."
"No, it isn't a good thing," Oriana snapped. "How would you feel if I cut off your leg and told you how much fun you'll have hopping?" "Cool it, sis," said Fern. "Bryce is only trying to help us feel better."
"I'm sorry," said Bryce. "I'll shut up. Please don't, said Jace. Your opinion is valued and welcome. We need to discuss this calmly and figure it out.
Is there a lot to figure out? Karina asked. We don't know why this has happened, so we don't know how to put it right. I've been wondering if it's related to our genes, said Parthenia. But not in terms of damage, more like a genetic clock counting down. I don't know how it works exactly, but maybe mages' powers have been ticking down over millennia until now, and suddenly they're gone. No mages are able to cast any more. It's over. You mean it could have affected all the people we left behind too? Asked Fern. None of the mages back home can cast now? I'm just speculating. My most urgent concern, said Karina, is what it means in terms of travelling to Earth. Is there any point now? Bryce was right when he said we have nothing to fear any longer, or at least no more to fear than regular people. So why should we continue our journey? As she spoke, the dream she'd been having when Darius awoke sprang to her mind. Ma, Ba, Nai, her great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and on, back in time, farther into the light. They had all had one thing in common, but she didn't share it with them any more. Mentally dragging herself back to the present, she asked, why spend the money from the Ember Gems on fitting out the Bathsheba when we could use it to settle down somewhere? You mean you want to give up everything you've worked for all this time? Asked Oriana. When you put it like that, I want to say no. But going to Earth was my idea. I feel like I've hauled you and the black dogs along with me. I don't know if that was right. What's happened has made me rethink everything. It's all a mess in my head. Camille and I might have settled down on Magog, Parthenia blurted. He wanted to anyway. I wasn't sure. He wanted me to give up being a mage, abandon the voyage, leave you all behind, and live there with him. She finished with a croaky voice, and a fat tear ran down her cheek. She wiped it away with the back of her hand. So that's what you two were arguing about, thought Karina. I'm glad you didn't. I would have missed you. We all would have, said Fern quietly. Parthenia's confession subdued everyone to a second silence. After a few minutes, Jace said quietly, We have another item to discuss today. Nala. She had fallen asleep, her thumb still in her mouth. What's wrong with her? Darius asked timidly. Karina realised she hadn't told him anything about his sister's medical status. The news had been a shock she hadn't quite recovered from herself, without the additional necessity of explaining it to her brother. She's sick. What else could she say? How to explain to a 7-year-old that his sibling would probably never be the same? Her brain is hurt, said Jace gently. That's why she's acting differently. Oh, said Darius. Did it happen when we fell asleep on Deck 0? Yes, that's right. When will she get better? We don't know. Maybe never. Oh no! Nala's going to need our help from now on, said Karina. We'll have to be patient as she learns to do things again. I can teach her. I'm sure you'll be a great helper. Karina turned to the others. I don't know how useful this discussion has been. We don't have any idea what to do to get our powers back, and I guess it's too soon to accept they're gone forever. Until we know that, we can't decide if we want to continue on our journey to Earth. But I do know one thing. We have to pour our resources into helping Nala. At Lakshmi Station they have the most up-to-date medical facilities in the sector. I propose that I take Nala there tomorrow and find out what they can do for her. I think we can all agree on that, said Bryce. Chapter 15. Parthenia hadn't spent much time aboard the late Mezban's ship, the Peregrine, and she wasn't in a mood to explore it now. Sitting on the bridge reminded her of the time Camille had taken her to the Duchess, the Black Dog's crippled military ship that remained attached to the Bathsheba. He'd frightened her by not telling her where they were going, and she'd had to explain to him what being a mage really meant. He'd seemed to try to understand how she had to be constantly vigilant to protect herself, though she wasn't sure he'd really succeeded. It wasn't something easy for others to comprehend, unless you grew up as a mage, unless you lived it, day in, day out. It wasn't possible to know how it felt. Nor was it possible to understand how it felt when it was all taken away from you. "Parthenia," said Karina, "I think you should know some things about Lakshmi Station. There are androids there called hosts and hostesses, and—" "I know what you're talking about. You don't need to explain." She had been tempted to reply, "The sex bots? Oh, I know all about them," just to embarrass and annoy her sister. But Darius and Nala were here. "You do?" Karina asked. "How come?" She was holding Nala on her lap, though she barely fit, while Darius was next to Shao, who was showing him the flight controls. "Some of the mercs were talking about them." "Oh, okay." Her sister looked worried and concerned. "For goodness sake," Parthenia said irritably, "I'm not 12. You don't have to protect me from that kind of thing. Do you really think that after growing up with mother and father, I don't understand what happens between adults?" She was tempted to say more about the times father would stare at her with a certain look in his eye, or when he would stand too close and touch her too much and in the wrong places. But she didn't want to burden Karina. She didn't hate her that much. Her sister looked deflated. She stroked Nala's hair and replied, "I was forgetting." "Lucky for you. I can't forget so easily." Karina sighed. "What I'm trying to say is, when we get to the station, be careful to stick with us. The place is huge and confusing, and it's easy to get lost. It's also full of all kinds of people, mostly visitors from the 3 warring systems. There are strict penalties for breaking regulations, but I'm sure plenty goes on the station officials don't know about, or at least they don't find out about until it's too late." "Yeah," said Shao, speaking over her shoulder as she sat at the controls. "Karina nearly got in a fight on our last trip. Jackson and I had to hold her back." The pilot was clearly trying to lighten the atmosphere, but Parthenia wasn't in the mood for it. Karina seemed to feel the same. After registering their looks, Shao gave a small cough and faced her console again. "So, Darius, do you want to take a turn?" His jaw dropped. "Me? Fly the ship?" "Sure, why not? I can trust you not to do anything stupid, right?" "I won't, I promise." "Then scoot over and sit here." The pilot got up, and Darius just about leapt into her seat. Shao opened a ship-wide comm. "Trainee pilot at the controls." Then she leaned over Darius to swipe the screen, stating, "Switching to manual." As she fastened her safety harness, Parthenia smiled. She was touched by the pilot's kind gesture and sensitivity. Darius hadn't said much, but he'd been quiet and glum since finding out about his sister's problems. He probably felt guilty, and Shao was doing a great job of taking his mind off it. Karina moved Nala to her own seat and strapped her in. As Parthenia secured her belt, the Peregrine suddenly dipped, and her stomach seemed to rise above her head. "Whoops," said Darius, giggling. Shao reached forward and gently moved his hands from the console. "Take it easy, Speed Racer." A swipe of her finger brought the ship level again. "Did you think you were training to pilot a fairground ride?" Nala had squealed at the sudden movement, but then she started giggling too. "That was fun! Do it again!" "No, thank you," said Shao. "Straight and steady, Darius, like I showed you." He bent his head down as he concentrated on the controls. The ship continued with small swerves and jumps for a few minutes. Then Darius's legs began to kick, which was a sure sign he was either bored or needed the bathroom. Xiao appeared to recognize the signs too, as she said, "Is that enough for now?" He nodded and closed his fingers, causing the peregrine to swoop again. An alarmed yell came from the passageway. Someone had decided to ignore the pilot's order to strap in. "Whoa!" said Xiao, switching to auto. Darius unfastened his harness and jumped out of his seat before running to Nala. "Did you see me flying the ship? Yeah, that was really cool. Did you see me, Karina, Parthenia?" "We did," Karina replied. "Do you want to be a pilot when you grow up?" "Nala, do you want to?" The boy's voice faltered and his face fell. "What's wrong?" Karina asked. "I was going to ask Nala if she wanted to look around the peregrine with me." He didn't need to say any more. Everyone knew what had happened the last time he'd gone exploring with his sister. "It's okay, sweetheart," said Karina. "As long as you stay out of restricted areas, there's nothing here that can hurt you." His features brightened. "What about it, Nala? Do you want to come with me?" Nala tried to undo her belt, but she couldn't manage it. Darius leaned in and did it for her. She hopped down from her seat, and Darius took her hand. Together they walked out. Parthenia saw Karina's gaze following their youngest sister. Nala now walked unsteadily with a pronounced limp. It was heartbreaking to watch. She knew exactly how Karina felt. "Maybe we'll find someone to help her at Lakshmi." "I hope so." Karina looked drained and tired. She'd spent the entire night in the sick bay after they'd found the children, and she probably hadn't slept much since. "Maybe Bongo can help us." "Bongo?" "He was our guide the first time we went to the station. Nice guy. You'll like him." Arriving at Lakshmi, Parthenia was initially underimpressed. The place seemed bare and boring, yet the mercs who had accompanied them for their R&R, as they called it, weren't fazed by its appearance. As they completed the entry procedures, they bantered with each other excitedly. The black dogs reminded her of big kids sometimes. Big, muscled, lethal children. She had to have an ID code etched onto her wrist, which was mildly painful, and then she passed through a scanner. When she stepped into the main area, her illusion about the station fell away. Sound and light crashed in on her. Lakshmi Station was humming with life and activity. "It's quite something, isn't it?" asked Xiao, raising her voice. "Have you ever been anywhere like it?" "No, never." The closest comparison Parthenia could make was the spaceport at Ithia. That had been thronged with hundreds of people too. It had been there Darius had spotted Karina and run up to her, thus revealing her existence to Father. What would have happened to them if Darius hadn't seen their sister? Karina had rescued them from the Shuras, escaping their flagship, the Nightfall. Would they ever have broken away without her help? Mother was already very sick by then, and Father had refused to have her transferred to a planet for treatment. After Mother died, they would have been stuck aboard the ship indefinitely. With a heavy heart, she was forced to admit that without Karina, she and her siblings would still be enslaved to their father's clan, casting to help Shura businesses and military offensives, imprisoned forever in their gilded cages. "Here he comes," said Karina. "Are you sure that's him?" asked Xiao. "Yep, I'm sure." "How can you tell?" Karina shrugged. Parthenia peered into the crowd of people and aliens, trying to see who they were talking about. From among the sea of bodies, an alien ran straight at them on many legs, its claws tapping the floor tiles. She took a backward step. Was it going to attack them? Where was the guide Karina had mentioned? Could he make the creature go away? "Hey," said Karina as the creature reached them. "Thanks for meeting us." "Hello again," it replied. "I got your comm. I have a few medical centres lined up. Want to make a start?" "Yeah, I brought Nala's information from our ship's doctor." She and Xiao began to follow the alien, Karina holding Nala's hand while Xiao held Darius's. This was Bongo. Karina looked over her shoulder. "Are you coming, Parthenia?" Chapter 16. "Hey, Bryce," Jackson said, approaching him in the refectory. "Fancy a spacewalk?" He put down his fork. "Now? After you finish eating? Me and Justus were thinking we need to get visuals on the damage the Regians did when they boarded the ship. The diagnostics can only tell us so much. If we're going to upgrade her, we need to know what we're facing." "Sure, but you should know I've never spacewalked before." "That's what I thought. It won't hurt for you to get some practice. You can never tell when stepping into the black might come in handy. If it's an emergency, you don't want to be doing it for the first time." "Okay, sounds good. Meet you at airlock D, this deck." As Jackson left, Bryce shoveled the remains of his rice and beans into his mouth. His first spacewalk would be a good distraction from the current situation. He'd come to the refectory to get a break from Fern and Oriana, who were taking the loss of their powers badly. They'd given up their usual activities and spent all their time lying around listlessly, occasionally attempting a cast. When it didn't work, Oriana would burst into tears, and Fern would stomp into their bedroom dramatically and throw himself on the bed. Bryce was sympathetic, though he knew he couldn't properly empathise with the teenagers. But being around them brought him down too, and he was already upset about Nala. He needed a breather. Jackson and Justus were suiting up when he arrived at the airlock. The two men seemed in a good mood, laughing about something. Bryce edged past them to lift a suit from the store. As he did so, he caught a whiff of alcohol. He halted. "You two been drinking?" Jackson replied. "I had a beer with lunch. Is that a problem?" "I thought we aren't supposed to drink before going outside." "Man, you sound like your girlfriend. Karina's no Cadwallader. Damn, that woman's a hard ass. No offence." "He's got a point," said Justus. "It is a little too soon to go out after having a drink. Maybe we should wait a couple of hours." "Says the guy who could barely walk when we got back from Lakshmi." "That was different. I wasn't planning on stepping into the black then." "I had one beer. I've lost count of how many spacewalks I've done. If I can't be trusted at the end of a tether after a single beer, I might as well shoot myself." Justus seemed to debate with himself for a moment before saying to Bryce, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. We're only taking a look around out there. If we were doing some work, it would be different. But if you're not comfortable, you can join us another time." The two older men continued to fasten up their suits. They'd worked on starships most of their adult lives, whereas Bryce had only ended up on the Bathsheba by accident. He couldn't remember what his ambitions had been while growing up on Ithia, but he knew they hadn't involved space travel. It was only after meeting Karina the idea of leaving his home planet had crossed his mind. But now this was to be his way of life for the next few years. He supposed he should learn all the ropes. "No, it's fine. I'll do it." Starship Agrav didn't extend to the hull. You couldn't successfully walk on a ship's exterior if you were constantly pulled toward her base. To compensate for the lack of gravity, Evasuit boots could be made magnetic, so the wearer's feet clung to metal surfaces, and tethers attached the suit's wearer to the hull. Additionally, if spacewalkers became separated from their vessels, nozzles at their elbows and back could expel pressurized gas to control movement. A final safety measure was a constant positioning signal. providing you didn't somehow end up very far from the ship. You could usually be picked up in time to save your life, even if your suit sprang a leak. In short, it was very hard to die on a spacewalk. As he looked out into the cold, dark, airless expanse beyond the airlock's outer hatch, Bryce found these facts comforting. Yet it didn't change his impression of how vast, empty, and dead it was out there. He'd become used to living aboard the Bathsheba, forgetting that only a few meters of hull separated him from— "Com check," came Jackson's voice inside his helmet. "Check," said Bryce. "You need to check your suit's levels too, Bryce," said Jackson. "Everything in normal range?" He studied his HUD, mildly annoyed. He had trained as a space soldier. He wasn't a complete Green Hornet wearing an EVA suit. "Yep. Okay, let's start aft and work our way forward. As well as the D airlocks, we can reach airlocks C and E on decks 3, 4 and 5. I'll take 5. Justus, you take 3. Bryce, you cover this deck." "What am I looking for?" "I expect we'll see acid damage from the Regian attack, but look for any kind of wear and tear too. Your helmet will pick up heat leaks. The computer is telling us the lasers are fully functional, but this ship's damned old. Who knows when they were last checked?" "Got it." Jackson pulled the tether out from his waist, reached beyond the airlock and clipped it onto the hull. Then he grabbed the edge of the hatch, hauled himself through it, twisted sideways and moved out of sight as the A-Grav lost its grip on him. There were 2 clunks as his boots stuck to the metal. "You're next," said Justus. Bryce copied Jackson's movements and soon found himself looking at the outside of the Bathsheba for the first time. A metal plane stretched far and wide beneath his feet, and above it hung a void peppered with points of white diamond. The hull was also peppered, but with dents and scorch marks. Long scratches had been gouged from it too, the results of encounters with space debris over the centuries, he guessed. An aura hung around the edges of the ship, brightening the black. Light from Lakshmi Station's star on the ship's far side. "Give it a minute before you move around," said Justus as he emerged. "Helps to steady yourself and get your bearings." He must have given the command to close the hatch, for it slid shut. Darkness closed over them like a blanket, alleviated only by the diffused light from the nearest star. Bryce's helmet switched to night vision and his view took on a steely tint. Jackson was already several meters away, walking the high-stepping, long-striding gait imposed by magnetized boots. Justus also set off. Bryce waited the advised minute, surveying the small laser weapons several meters distant from him, pointed toward the airlock. Their purpose was to defend against boarders. In the Regian's case that had been a bust. He scanned for heat loss, but none showed. It was time to take a closer look. He lifted a foot to break the magnetized contact. Weightlessness seized him and he wobbled. His sense of balance was all over the place until his foot met metal again. 4 lasers surrounded the airlock, mounted and angled to point at an edge of the square portal. The first laser Bryce checked didn't appear to have anything wrong with it, though, despite Jackson's advice, he wasn't sure what he was supposed to be looking for. He connected with the ship's computer and searched for the device's schematics. When the image representing the laser's exterior came up, it matched what he was seeing. He moved toward the second laser. Jackson cried out, "Help! Help!" Then just as his voice sounded in Bryce's helmet. "What's wrong? What's happened?" Jackson yelled. "I accidentally activated one of the lasers! Ah!" He sprawled on his side, attached by one boot to the hull. Bryce began to sprint in the direction of his injured shipmate, except he couldn't sprint. Each movement of his legs required breaking the magnetic hold, slowing him down to little more than a fast walk. Should he use his pressurized gas pack to help him get to Jackson's side faster? Justus was heading for their shipmate at a similarly restricted pace. He couldn't see exactly what was wrong with Jackson, but he must have been hit by a laser, which meant a suit leak. If they didn't get him inside quickly, he would suffocate. Bryce demagnetized his boots and his feet lifted a fraction off the hull. The smallest push would send him floating away from the ship. He checked his tether and then fired a small spurt from the nozzles at his elbows and on his back. The effect was far greater than he'd anticipated. Within less than a second, he was tens of meters from the hull. The Bathsheba continued to recede from him at an alarming rate. The downed Jackson and run-walking Justus reduced to dolls on the expanse of pock-marked metal. He adjusted the direction of the nozzles and angled his body forward before firing a second spurt of gas, even smaller than the first. He moved headlong this time, traversing a line parallel to the colony ship. That was better. His tether looped out below him, a reassuring link to safety. Justus had almost reached Jackson. Bryce cursed. He should have walked, not attempted this ridiculous effort. Turning his head toward his companions, he fired a third burst of gas. By slow manoeuvring and several corrections, he managed to bring himself back to the hull, nearby Jackson. To Bryce's confusion, the man was standing by the time he reached him and acting normally. He didn't seem to be hurt. Bryce realized he hadn't heard anything from either of his shipmates for a minute or so. Then laughter exploded into his helmet. Jackson and Justus had cut their comms to him. They'd been laughing all the while he'd been making his way over. When Bryce's boots finally snapped to magnetic contact with the hull, Jackson slapped him on the back. "It's good to know I can rely on you in a crisis."
"I haven't seen anything so funny in a long while,"
said Justus, gasping for air.
"Thanks for that." "Come on, fellas,"
Bryce remonstrated, but he knew there was no use in saying any more. The mercs loved to have fun at others' expense, even if it cut close to the knuckle sometimes.
"Did you set me up right from the beginning, or was this a last-minute joke?"
"Right from the start," Jackson replied. "Even gargled a mouthful of beer just so I could breathe it out on you." He leaned closer. "Word of advice, don't ever go spacewalking with someone who's been drinking. Not even just one beer."
"Okay,"
said Bryce ruefully.
"I get it."
It was a hard lesson but well taught.
"Did you make up the part about checking the lasers too?"
"No, we need to do that. Take a look at Deck 4 C-Lock. I'll carry on checking this one." Justus continued to chuckle as he high-stepped toward another set of lasers. Bryce began the slow walk to Deck 4C. He hadn't gone far, however, before Jackson exclaimed, "Holy shit!" Half expecting another prank, Bryce turned to see what he'd found. Jackson was bent over a laser, pulling at something. There was a blinding flash, momentarily wiping out Bryce's night vision. When he could see again, Jackson was collapsing, and an object was floating away from him, spinning lazily in its own orbit. It took Bryce a second to realize the object was an arm. Chapter 17. Nala looked glum, and Parthenia knew exactly how she felt. This was the 5th medical centre they'd visited, accompanied by the strange alien spider creature Bongo, and at each one her little sister had been questioned, prodded, poked, scanned and tested. She didn't seem to understand what was going on, but she had to be exhausted. Parthenia only had to watch and wait as the medics did their work, and she was exhausted. Nala's prospects didn't look good. After an hour or longer of investigation, the conclusions of the doctors at the previous 4 establishments had been the same. There wasn't much they could do. While medical science had cracked the problems of regenerating every other human tissue and organ, triggering the brain into repairing itself remained elusive. "You can expect to see some improvement," said the head of the latest centre. "If you follow our treatment program, Nala is young and her brain is still developing. Some of the functions that were lost in the hypoxia incident will be taken over by the remaining healthy areas. But will she ever return to her former state? I would say, according to what I've seen, it's unlikely." "It would be hard for us to stay here for a long course of treatment," said Karina. "I was hoping something could be done for Nala over the short term. Out of the question, I'm afraid. Your sister requires months of therapy to make any progress. I think perhaps you're underestimating just how much brain damage she's sustained. But Darius was deprived of oxygen over the same period, and he seems fine." "With respect, you don't know that. I could run some tests." "No more testing." Addressing her siblings, Karina said, "Come on, let's go." The doctor murmured. "There's the small question of payment for—" "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. I'll pay on my way out." "I'm sorry we can't help you." Karina didn't reply as they left the office. At the receptionist's desk, she held up her ID code to the scanner for the centre to extract their fee. The figures on the screen were a drop in the ocean of the amount they had available. But creds weren't worth much when they couldn't help Nala. "If we could just cast heal," Karina muttered. "What now?" Parthenia asked. "Find Shao and Bongo. I want to talk to some weapons suppliers and get a feel for what we should buy for the Bathsheba." "So we're still going to Earth?" Karina sighed. "Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what the hell we should be doing anymore, but it won't hurt to explore our options." Shao had balked at attending Nala's 4th round of testing and had gone to find her Merc buddies. Bongo had left them when they'd arrived at the 5th centre, though he'd said he would be back soon. Karina had purchased the local comm and translation devices on her previous trip, and Parthenia waited, holding Nala and Darius's hands on the busy thoroughfare, while her sister contacted the missing members of their party. Bongo was the first to appear, dodging between the many pedestrians with ease. He was clearly accustomed to it, even avoiding the people who jumped in random directions, startled by his approach. "Any luck?" he asked. "Nope," Karina replied. "Sorry to hear that. Do you want to try another place? There are a few—" "There's no point. They're all going to say the same thing." "You're probably right. The medical centres compete for custom, so they're all pretty up to date on the latest treatments, though I would say they're best at combat injuries. Where to next?" "Military equipment suppliers, I guess. Starship Defense Armaments." Parthenia demurred. "What?" "The children are hungry and tired, and so am I. How about we find somewhere to rest and eat?" "Yeah, you're right." Karina rubbed her forehead. "I was forgetting." "If food and relaxation are next on the program," said Bongo, "I know just the place." "Is Shao meeting us here?" Parthenia asked when they arrived at the restaurant Etheric Edibles. "I can't raise her," Karina replied. "She isn't answering her comm. What about the other mercs? She must be with them." "Yeah, you're right. I'll try Van Hasty." Bongo was speaking to the Maitre D', another, different alien. This creature was humanoid, but extremely tall and thin, and completely hairless. After a short conversation where Bongo explained all the humans were from Out Sector, Parthenia had the impression the maitre d' was female, beckoned them with a long-fingered hand, and led them between the occupied tables to the rear of the restaurant. Her movement seemed full of effort, as if she was struggling with the local gravity. "I can give you an hour and a half," she said. "I have a booking for this table." "Thanks," Karina replied. "We won't be here that long." "Did you manage to speak to Van Hasty?" asked Parthenia. No. Karina ushered Darius and Nala onto the bench between her and Parthenia. Bongo dragged over a low seat with a hole in the base and squatted on it, announcing, "I recommend the fungus and larvae. I've eaten it here before, and it's delicious." Parthenia swallowed. Table manners, especially when dining with guests, had been ingrained into her from a very young age. She smiled politely. "Is that a local specialty?" "It's a Marchonish dish, very tasty." "Are you from Marchon?" "Stars, no!" A bubbling sound came from the alien's orifices as he appeared to laugh. "My species' home system is a very long way from here, and our culture is peaceful. We would never end up in a conflict like the Three-System War." "Fungus and larvae, Karina asked, scanning the menu. "You aren't serious?" Parthenia mentally questioned her sister, but she didn't want to offend Bongo by speaking aloud. She was about to ask their guide about the war when Karina continued, "The larvae are dead, right?" "Well, they're frozen," Bongo replied. "So, technically..." "Yeah," said Karina. "You're not exactly selling it. I think I'll pass." Her head down, she carried on reading. Parthenia was also reading, trying to find something Darius and Nala wouldn't reject out of hand. One of the noodle dishes seemed a fair bet. She made the suggestion. "I want to choose for myself," Darius exclaimed. "I want what Darius wants," said Nala. "Fine," said Parthenia. "Let Karina know what you decide." She wasn't particularly hungry. As she waited for the others to pick their dishes, she decided to try an experiment. She had brought her elixir along. Karina hadn't wanted her to, but the small bottle of liquid hadn't triggered any alarms. She wanted to try a cast. It could be something aboard the Bathsheba that was preventing them from working, or something in the ship's vicinity. After checking no one was watching, she took the bottle from its bag at her waist and unscrewed the lid. Karina looked up at precisely the wrong time, from Parthenia's viewpoint, and saw what she was doing. Her sister gave her a severe frown and shook her head sharply. "Is something the matter?" Bongo asked her, his many-eyed head swivelling from one sibling to the other. "No, nothing at all," Parthenia replied, taking a sip of elixir while meeting Karina's hard stare. She closed her eyes. A small cast would do for a test, something simple. She wrote the send character in her mind, followed by a message, "You don't own me, sis," and then released it. From the lack of reaction on Karina's face, it was clear the cast had failed. Her heart settled like lead in her chest. Even at Lakshmi Station, she no longer had her special ability. "I'm no longer a mage." The words in her head sounded unreal. It seemed impossible they were true. Perhaps reading her expression, Karina's look became sorrowful and sympathetic. Darius and Nala called out their meal choice, which was something that sounded deep-fried and very unhealthy. Parthenia said she wouldn't be eating anything. The food took only a few minutes to arrive. The center of the table retracted and steaming dishes rose on the flat top of a column into the gap. Bongo reached over the tabletop with two limbs and picked up a bowl of something looking suspiciously like chopped-up fungus peppered with frozen maggots. The maggots were rapidly thawing and beginning to wriggle. He placed the dish in front of him, scooped out a handful, or rather a clawful, of food, and put it underneath his chair. When the claw reappeared, it was empty. That explained the hole in his seat. Parthenia was deeply pleased she'd decided not to eat. Thankfully, Darius and Nala were too occupied by their own food to notice and make a rude comment. Karina, if she registered what the alien was doing, didn't react. After waiting a few minutes, Parthenia asked, "Bongo, can you explain about the Three Systems War? How long has it been going on, and what's it about? Ah, do you want the official story or the truth? What do you think? Karina asked in return. I'll give you both, seeing as one kind of explains the other. But don't ever repeat what I tell you to a Marchonish, Quintonese or Gugongian. You'll get yourself banned from the station, or worse. Chapter 18. Jackson had lost an arm but gained a Regian one. He was staring at the alien limb stupidly while his severed prosthetic dripped fluid.
"You need to get out of your suit,"
said Justus as the airlock's outer hatch closed and atmosphere hissed in. Jackson raised his head. "What? Oh, yeah." Bryce had expected the man to be in worse condition, but his suit had only lost pressure to the top of the remainder of his arm. A seal had activated, preventing air from escaping and providing a tourniquet to slow blood loss. "You know what this means?" asked Jackson. The airlock's inner hatch opened. Justus removed his helmet.
"You fancied trying a different kind of arm?"
He began to unfasten Jackson's suit for him. The merc was clearly in shock, which wasn't surprising. Amputation via laser beam would shock the most hardened veteran, even when the limb in question wasn't made of flesh and blood. Justus removed Jackson's helmet, and his voice switched from calm to natural as he said, "It explains how the Regians got around the laser defences." As if suddenly hit by revulsion, he dropped the insectoid appendage. Black and shiny, it lay on the deck. The limb must have been stuck in the laser emitter ever since the Regian attack. It had travelled with the Bathsheba all the way to Magog and Gog, and the millions of miles the ship had voyaged afterward.
"They swarmed them,"
Bryce said.
"The Regians threw themselves at the lasers to give their buddies time to crack the airlocks."
"Yeah," agreed Jackson. "Their usual offensive tactic. Overwhelm your opponent by sheer force of numbers, whether the enemy is another species or a weapon."
"Sick bastards,"
muttered Justus.
"Step out,"
he ordered. He'd removed Jackson's suit down to his knees. "Hey," the merc protested, apparently only just noticing what Justus had been doing. "I can do it." He pushed the legs of his suit down with his remaining arm and lifted his feet out of the boots.
"I'm not a freaking kid." "Does your arm hurt?"
asked Bryce, wondering if the prosthetic had a biofeedback linked to Jackson's brain. "Nah, it stung a little when the beam cut it, but the pain sensors shut down after that."
"Well, one thing's for sure,"
Justus commented, beginning to remove his own suit.
"We've got to replace all the lasers. They shouldn't misfire like that, even if someone's tugging at them like you did. But we would have had to get rid of them anyway. I've never seen such antiques. They must be centuries old."
"Assuming we're still going to Earth," said Jackson, "and we need defences."
"Why wouldn't we?"
asked Justus. Bryce explained.
"Karina's been reconsidering the options since she and her brothers and sisters lost their powers. She's not sure there's any point in continuing the journey anymore. That's news to me. Don't we get a say? If we don't go to Earth, I'm not sure where I'd go. Lodoquilla's closed to me now. I can't go back there after what happened to my old shipmates. I'd be executed for desertion."
"But you didn't desert," said Bryce.
"Doesn't matter. In my culture, it's all for one, not every man for himself. I'm expected to defend my company or die trying."
"No need to fret," said Jackson. "You're a de facto black dog now. Wherever we go, you come too."
"Says who?"
"Says me." Jackson patted his shoulder.
"Thanks. That means a lot. So I guess you'll have to get that arm replaced now."
"Yep, another item on Lynn's shopping list." While the two men talked, Bryce had been taking off his suit and helmet and stowing them. The remains of Jackson's prosthetic continued to drip on the deck. Another antique to be replaced. His brow wrinkled, and he lifted the short stump to peer at the end.
Feels weird. Never thought I'd lose it like this. How long did you have it? Asked Bryce. I dunno. Long time. So long it felt.
Bryce's ship's comm bleeped an urgent signal. He slapped it.
What?
You have to come to the bridge, Oriana cried. Right now! The ships are firing! The three men sprinted down the passageway. What a time for an attack! Shao, their only experienced pilot, was on Lakshmi with Karina. Would Bibic be able to perform evasive manoeuvres? Could the mammoth Bathsheba even move evasively? Bryce assumed that other black dogs had been alerted and someone had taken charge of the ship's weapons, such as they were.
Why the hell are they firing at us? Jackson asked breathlessly. We don't have anything to do with their stupid war. You'd think they would give us a warning at least, gasped Justus.
They reached the bridge and the doors slid aside, revealing Oriana, Fern, Bibic and a couple of mercs watching a holo playing in the centre of the room.
What's happening? Asked Jackson. Have we taken any hits? Did you put up the force shield, Bibic? Why would I do that?
The young merc replied mildly, raising his eyebrows.
Jackson said, To defend the...
He paused and studied the holo closely.
Wait, they're not firing at us. Oriana, said Bibic. I told you they would get the wrong idea from what you said. Sorry, guys, I think she got overexcited.
The scene playing out on the 3D image was of two fleets in battle, against each other. Pulse bolts streamed across space as the ships appeared to crawl slowly to new positions, though in reality they were moving fast. Sorry, Oriana said sheepishly. I thought you would want to see it, Bryce.
I do, but maybe explain what you mean a bit more clearly next time.
It's so cool, Fern exclaimed. I think the one on the left is winning.
Not so cool when you're in the middle of it, said Jackson. Don't you know that? You must have been in some space battles in your time, youngster.
Yeah, but this is different. It's like a vid game.
It's not a game when your life's at risk. You'd do well to remember that.
Jackson's expression became serious and contemplative. How many battles had he taken part in? It had to be a lot, considering the grizzled man's age, and the fact that he wasn't even sure how long he'd had his prosthetic arm. Karina had told Bryce once that Jackson had taken part in the first attempt to rescue Darius from the Dirksons. How many of that team of black dogs was still alive? Not the captain, Spiedel, certainly. Karina had spoken sadly of how he had died in the second successful attempt. Others had died since. Atoy, who had lost her life to the Regians, and Halliday, who had perished in a glider crash on Magog. He guessed Jackson and Karina might be the only remaining survivors from the original rescue team. Mercenary life was generally brutal and short. If the old merc made it to their journey's end, where he could live out the rest of his life in peace and safety, that would be something. Chapter 19. So, said Bongo, adjusting his position in his seat as if getting comfortable. The official reason for the conflict between the governments of Marchon, Quinton and Gugong is a territory dispute. There's a rogue planet roughly equidistant between the three systems, and each sovereignty claims it as its own. What makes the planet so valuable? Asked Parthenia. Nothing, as far as I'm aware, and I've done a fair bit of research into it. It's a small place, barely bigger than a moon. Nothing at all? Exclaimed Karina. Shh! Bongo gestured downward with a claw. This is a sensitive subject around here. You never know who you might offend. He made a burbling sound. That's the name of my people. We have to be careful to remain neutral about the war. Feelings run high, even after 80 standard years of fighting. Maybe because of 80 years of fighting. They've been at war for 80 years? Karina exclaimed again, equally loudly. Bongo's head swiveled as each of his eyes glared at her in turn. Sorry, she said, continuing more quietly. They've been at war for 80 years. 83 to be exact. Over a worthless rogue planet. He's already told us that, Parthenia reminded her. I'm just checking. It's a real war, right? She asked Bongo. With people dying and everything. The estimated death toll passed into the hundreds of millions decades ago. Parthenia asked, How long have you been here? This will be my 14th standard year at Lakshmi. I'll probably make it around 15 before heading home. I'll have saved enough by then to retire, providing I'm frugal. That's not to say I haven't enjoyed my work here, but you can only listen to the same biased, dogmatic opinions from each side for so long, you know. I can't tell you what a relief it was to hear you guys are from out sector. I suppose it must be hard to stay out of the argument when you're right in the middle of it, Parthenia commented. You don't know the half of it. To keep the war going, the governments on the 3 planets feed their populations all kinds of propaganda, and the people believe it because, well, why wouldn't they? They never get to meet each other except here at Lakshmi. And then they segregate themselves. Most service jobs are carried out by non-humans. Prior to the recruitment drive for workers from other areas of the sector, the fighting on the station used to be a lot worse. What do their governments tell them? Parthenia asked. Oh, all sorts of nonsense. That the other side beats their children, practices slavery, creates human-animal mutants, is planning to take over the sector, and so on. I forget who says what about the different sides. It's all bullshit, but there's no point in reasoning with them. They've been told this stuff all their lives. It's best to not get involved. They're in too deep. But they must interact with each other at least a little, Karina said. We were accused of coming from the wrong planet in a bar the other day, so it happens. It's kind of hard to believe they see and speak to the people from other planets, and yet never question what they've been told. Some probably do question it, but they don't dare to say anything. It must be hard to speak out when the war's gone on so long, and everyone you know believes the propaganda. I think I understand, Parthenia commented. They've been fighting for generations, and the war has become a part of their identity. They're all invested in it, every family, and every family must have people who died in the fight. Propaganda aside, that gives them a reason for hating their opponents and continuing the war. They want revenge. What an identity to have, said Karina. I'm glad ours wasn't. She stopped speaking, firmly closing her lips. Parthenia guessed exactly what her sister meant and what she'd nearly said. The same thought had sprung to her own mind. From what she'd come to learn about mage culture, they were essentially pacifistic, like Bongo's species. It was a far better identity to have than to belong to a warlike society. But were they even mages any longer? Speaking softly to Bongo, she said, You mentioned something about the real reason for the war. Ah, yes, he replied, before making his strange burbling sound again. Now I'm wishing I hadn't. He tapped 2 claws on the tabletop before continuing. You must promise me you'll never mention this to another soul at the station, or to anyone among your crew who can't be trusted to not pass it on. You must especially promise me that, if you do mention it by accident, you never tell anyone it came from me. We promise, said Karina. Yes, Parthenia said. We'll never speak of it. She checked Nala and Darius, who definitely couldn't be expected to keep any such promise. But they were playing a game with the condiments, oblivious to the conversation. Perhaps I don't actually need to tell you, said Bongo. You seem like intelligent people. I'll give you some facts, and you can draw your own conclusions. I told you the war began 83 years ago, didn't I? Do you know how old Lakshmi Station is? 80 years, Karina guessed. Wrong. She tried again. 75? Construction must have begun after the war started. Someone saw an opportunity to make money selling weapons to the three sides, and so they built the station. Wrong again. Oh! Parthenia moved her hand to her mouth as the realization hit. 70? asked Karina. No, Parthenia said. Lakshmi isn't younger than the war, is it, Bongo? It's older, right? Her sister frowned. But why? The frown disappeared and was replaced by open-mouthed horror. Stars! You don't think... The owners of Lakshmi Station are fabulously wealthy, and so are the arms dealers, medical professionals, and everyone else who services the war machine, including the government leaders. Tears pricked Parthenia's eyes. You said hundreds of millions have died? The figures are probably into the billions by now, and that isn't counting all the injured, permanently disabled, orphaned and bereaved. Could it really be true? Could the war between the three planets only have come about in order to make a small group of people rich? She guessed some high-ranking individuals from Marchon, Quinton and Gugon must have worked together to hatch the plan. They must have begun to build Lakshmi in preparation. Then when the time was ripe, they'd whipped up the planet's inhabitants into a frenzy of xenophobic hatred and staged an incident to trigger the war. She'd known some terrible people in her time, such as her own father, but she'd thought his personality was rare. She'd been wrong. Lakshmi Station had to be making money for lots of people. Karina echoed her thoughts. Do you think everyone who profits from Lakshmi Station is aware of what's going on? I can't say. I've never talked about it to anyone outside my own kind. And if you weren't from out sector, I wouldn't be talking about it with you either. If the conspiracy was revealed and the populations turned against their governments, a lot of powerful people would lose everything. They would never risk it by allowing a blabbermouth to live. He bent his head forward conspiratorially. That's the real reason I want to leave. I profit from Lakshmi Station along with everyone who works here. It makes me uncomfortable, and by buying weapons here, we're complicit too. Don't be dumb, said Karina. We didn't know about the reason for the war before we arrived, and we still don't know for sure. Bongo could be wrong. She addressed him. You don't know this for sure, right? You're only guessing. Before he could answer, Parthenia retorted, It's a damned good guess. Think about it. What other reason could there be to go to war over a useless lump of rock floating in interstellar space? Then the people are stupid for not figuring it out and doing something about it. Stupid or brainwashed? Same thing. How can you be so callous? Parthenia asked her sister, nearly rising from her seat in anger. Darius and Nala, who had been happily chattering as they played their game, fell silent and looked from one sister to the other. I'm not callous, Karina said. I'm just not interested in other people's wars. I have a family to take care of, and if it means striking deals with self-serving warmongers, that's what I'll do. They were back to the old argument they'd had on Ostalon. Karina didn't feel responsibility toward her fellow human beings. Parthenia's anger eased. It was only to be expected. Karina had been alienated from non-mages for most of her life. She saw ordinary folk as different, with the possible exception of Bryce and Nala. She didn't really care about other people, and probably never would. Well, I think we should complete our business transactions and leave at the earliest opportunity. Now we're here, we don't have much choice about buying what we need, but I don't want to be a part of what's going on any longer than we have to. You won't hear any argument from me about that, said Karina. But I wish we could do something for Nala. Oh dear, said Bongo. This is bad. This is very bad. What? Karina asked. Your companions are in deep shit. Chapter 20. An hour earlier, Shao had found Rhys, Van Hasty and the other mercs enjoying their R&R in the Nebula Ooze on the upper level of Deck 32. Why they'd chosen this place was beyond her. Compared to the rest of Lakshmi, it was a real dive. Most of the bartenders were Bongo's species, and they certainly needed their plentiful legs to serve the customers who crowded at every bar. The men and women looked like the lowest class of Lakshmi visitors, starship maintenance crews or space fleet grunts. Their clothes were the cheapest prints and were falling apart even so. Their hair was shaggy and unkempt, and some bore visible scars. Skin repair was cheap and widely available, so they were either too poor to afford it or were substance addicts, preferring to spend their limited funds on their kicks. The decor matched the clientele. The furnishings were shabby and dirty, and the only decoration on the walls were stains and scuff marks. Underlying the smell of alcohol and the smoke of narcotic herbs were the odours of sweat and bad breath. "What are you doing here, guys?" she asked when she reached the merc's table, raising her voice over the hubbub. "What's wrong?" Rhys asked. "Don't like the atmosphere? Seems pretty cool to me." His pupils were dilated, and Shao didn't think it was only due to the low lighting. "It's a dump. Come on, let's go somewhere else." "Relax," said Van Hasty. "Sit down and have a drink. I'll get you one. What do you want?" "They don't have table service." It was another indication of the bar's poor quality. There were 3 standards of service in bars and restaurants, staffed by trained professional servers, the highest standard, entirely automated, and staffed by low-skilled, badly paid migrant labour. This place clearly fell into the last category. "It's not a problem," said Van Hasty. "I like seeing those spider things pouring drinks. You know they can serve 3 people at once. It's like watching a show at the fair." "I don't think we should stay here. There must be a million better bars than this. Why'd you pick it?" Rhys shrugged. "We just wandered in. If you don't like it, we can leave." "Great, let's go. Just have one drink while we finish ours." Shao relented. 1 drink wouldn't hurt. "Okay, I'll have whatever you guys are having," she told Van Hasty. The merc left the table and shouldered her way through the crowd. The patrons were tightly packed, but she was a tall, powerful woman and had no trouble in forcing a passage through the throng. Shao pulled out a stool from under the table and sat down. Rhys turned to the merc sitting next to him and said something Shao didn't catch. He was smirking and his head wobbled, as if he was under the influence of something. Damn it! The black dogs hadn't had a chance to unwind in months, and they'd come close to dying horrible deaths at the hands of the Regians. She knew from her years working with them what was coming next. They were going to really let loose and have a blast. Most likely they wouldn't be able to make their own way back to the Peregrine. They would have to be carried. Though she wouldn't do the same herself, she didn't have a problem with it per se. The men and women risked death while they were on a job. It made sense that they lived their lives to the full while they still could. But they were at Lakshmi Station. Karina had lectured them on the severity of the laws here. But Shao had a feeling the mercs hadn't taken her as seriously as they should. Karina had a rep for being a hard-ass, and the black dogs were used to bending the rules while out of sight of their commander. Cadwallader's iron-fisted leadership style had trained them to it. That, and the fact the average merc had the mentality of a teenager, spelled trouble in a situation like this. Van Hasty returned with her drink. Steam or smoke curled from the bright violet liquid. Shao checked the glasses on the table. They were half full of the same cocktail. "Oh well, I got what I asked for." She took a sip and winced as the sour, viscous fluid slipped down her throat. Then it hit. The room swam before her and took on a different hue. She grabbed the edge of the table with her other hand. "What the hell is in this?" "Who knows?" Van Hasty replied, lifting her own glass to her lips. "It's called sudden death." "Sudden death, huh?" Xiao carefully put her drink down. A woman sidled up to Rhys and placed an arm around his neck before bending low to whisper in his ear. Her large breasts performed a gravity-defying miracle as they remained inside her dress. Xiao took a double take. It wasn't a woman, it was a hostess, and not an expensive model. Even in the bar's dim lights, her skin's sheen appeared artificial, and her long, curly chestnut hair looked fake. Rhys reached up and cupped one weighty breast, while his other hand disappeared behind her, or rather it. Van Hasty and Xiao shared an ew look. In another moment, Rhys was up on his feet and staggering off into the crowd, one arm around the hostess's waist. "Seriously?" Xiao asked Van Hasty. "I know. I think he has a fetish." A group of youngsters standing nearby had been edging closer to the table since Xiao had arrived, pushed in by the sheer number of people jostling for space. The young people looked different from the rest of the patrons. They were well dressed, their clothes intricately made, and the women wore jewellery that appeared authentic. They seemed oblivious to their encroachment on the Merc space. What were they doing here when they could obviously afford to patronise more upmarket bars? Perhaps, like Rhys, they had a fetish for sleaze. The crowd pressed closer, and a young man in the group stepped backward, bringing his behind right up to one of the Mercs' heads. Pamuk yelled, "Hey, I can smell ass!" Standing, she tapped to the man on the shoulder. "I don't feel like sniffing your butt today. Find somewhere else to shove your backside, okay?" In response, he grinned and grabbed her before grinding against her and saying, "If you don't like my backside, how about my front?" Pamuk's elbow shot back and she landed a punch that had his eyes rolling up before he collapsed into his companions. "Cut it out!" Xiao hollered. "You'll get us all in trouble!" But she might as well have shouted into the void. Another man in the group leapt at Pamuk, but Van Hasty was already on her feet and in his way with her fists up. The three remaining black dogs weren't far behind, and neither were their antagonists. Before Xiao could say another word, a full-on brawl was taking place. Rhys appeared from nowhere and dove into the combatants. The bar's patrons drew back, forming a circle of gawkers. The man who'd been punched unconscious lay at the fighter's feet, heedless of what he'd started. Xiao hesitated. Should she stay to help pick up the pieces when the Mercs inevitably beat the rich kids to a pulp? Or should she leave and let them deal with their own problems? From what she understood of Lakshmi, there would be severe repercussions for the fight. Loyalty made her stay. Chapter 21. Bongo's species was apparently telepathic. While Karina had been talking with Parthenia about the war, he'd received a tip-off from a friend, warning him the Mercs had been taken into custody and were in danger of being spaced. Leaving Parthenia to look after Darius and Nala, Karina raced with the alien to the security centre, where Xiao, Van Hasty, Rhys, and 4 others were being held. "Why didn't I receive a comm about this?" she asked Bongo as they ran, dodging the ever-present crowds. "You would have, eventually, but maybe not until it's too late. That's the way they do things around here. They inform the relatives and friends after the sentence has been carried out and pay compensation if the accused is found innocent on appeal. They call it retroactive justice. That's a hell of a system. It certainly keeps most everyone under control. Not the Bathsheba's crew, obviously. They don't know about the law around here." "Well," said Bongo, "they just found out." "I don't get it. Some meathead nearly started a fight with me the first time I visited. Why would he do that if the laws are so draconian? It was probably all show. There's plenty of audacious talk goes on in those places, especially when people are buzzed, but hardly anything ever comes of it. Most visitors aren't that dim-witted. The Fifth Point Justice Office where the black dogs were being held was kilometres away. Karina had to take the metro with Bongo for an hour and a half, changing trains twice to reach it. Along the way, she'd asked him if there wasn't a faster way to travel. There was. A second network of tunnels for autocars connected all the areas of the station, but it was only available to a minority of Lakshmi residents, not visitors or migrant workers. By the time they arrived at the relevant district, she was a frazzled mess, out of her mind with worry she would be too late to save the Mercs. She still hadn't received a communication from the authorities that her companions were under arrest. To be on the safe side, she had calmed Parthenia, telling her to take the kids to the Peregrine and wait there. She couldn't risk them accidentally contravening the station's strict regulations. She wouldn't have time to fix a second problem. This district was far quieter than the commercial zone. The metro car had been nearly empty as it pulled into the station at the end of the line, and the platform all but deserted. Overhead, the ceiling was so high it was lost in darkness, the lights on the walls too weak to penetrate it. "It must cost a fortune to heat this place," she commented, partly to alleviate her anxiety as they entered the exit tunnel. "It costs hardly anything at all," Bongo replied. "Lakshmi derives its power directly from its sun, with minute energy loss. The invention of the tech was one of the things that made the building of the station possible." "Did the inventors share the knowledge with the local systems?" "Guess. Of course not. It's one of the station's best-kept secrets." When they left the metro, Karina had to hold out her wrist for her ID code to be scanned. Bongo seemed to have a free pass because his barrier opened automatically. Outside, she stumbled and almost fell. A blue sky stretched wide above them, looking entirely authentic. It even had clouds. For a second, she'd felt as though she was suddenly walking on a planet's surface. Is that real? It's an illusion, but a good one, as I understand. Is that what the sky looks like on your home planet? She thought back. It had been a long time since she'd left the planet where she'd been born. Yes, but it wasn't so blue. The Justice Office is this way. What colour was the sky on Bongo's world? Only a few pedestrians walked the streets, which were lined with trees and shrubs, some in flower. The differences between here and the zone built for visitors continued to make their impression. Long-term Lakshmi residents had created a pleasant home. She swallowed as she remembered it had been built with the blood of billions. If only Bryce were here. She was afraid that when she met with the justice officers, she might fly off the handle and ruin everything. A tall, wide building of pale cream stone occupied centre stage in the street. Pillars supported an overhang at the top of its steps, and beyond them stood a series of open double doors. Bongo led the way up the stairs, his many legs making short work of the climb. They walked through a set of doors into a huge lobby. Despite the size of the space, there was only one counter, and one officer sitting behind it. A line of 6 or 7 people had formed. "Shit!" Karina blurted as they joined the end of it. "This is fucking ridiculous!" "Calm down. Losing your temper will get you nowhere here. If we're lucky, they'll only turf you out, but that'll be the end of your chance to help your friends." She took his words to heart. While they waited, she closed her eyes and recalled the techniques Nainai had taught her to steady her mind and body. She took control of her breathing and mental focus as they moved closer to the front of the line. By the time they reached it, most of her tension had eased, and she could address the person on the other side of the desk composedly. "Some of my companions were brought here. and I'd like to see what I can do to help them. Names? The officer asked, not looking up from her interface. Karina began to state them. Before she was halfway through, the officer interrupted, saying, "Yeah, they're here. They have some pretty serious charges. Causing a fracas, disturbing the peace, assaulting a justice officer. You're lucky you arrived in time to see them before their sentence is carried out. They're due to be spaced in 15 minutes. She looked up. You want to see them, right? Say a final goodbye and hear their last wishes. No! Karina yelled, her calm demeanour falling away in an instant. The officer frowned and reached for a button on her counter. Sorry, said Bongo. Please, there's no need to summon anyone. We aren't here to make any trouble. What my companion means is, yes, we would like to see them very much. I understand there's a fee involved. Can't we? Said Karina, the sound of her blood pulsing in her ears. Isn't there anything? Something hard and sharp touched her hand. She looked down. Bongo had put one of his claws on it. Was he trying to calm her or console her? Yeah, there is a fee, said the officer. Let me see. It's per person, and there are 7 in custody. Do you want to see all of them? I don't. What a question. Of all the mercs who had gotten themselves into trouble, the only one she knew well was Xiao. Did she want to see them only to say farewell before they faced an excruciating death? Yes, all of them. Numbly, she held up her wrist to the scanner as the figure appeared on the screen. Through there, said the officer. A door opened in the wall to the rear of her desk. Karina trudged toward it, every step leaden as she dreaded what lay beyond. Bongo scuttled beside her. Hey, called the officer. She only paid for herself, not you too. The alien hesitated. Oh, what the hell. Go ahead. I'm feeling generous. Chapter 22. The Peregrine felt silent and empty to Parthenia, despite the racket Darius and Nala were making as they raced up and down the passageways. She'd never been the only adult aboard a starship before. It had been stressful enough finding the way to the right exit from Lakshmi and getting the children into their Eva suits and through the umbilicus by herself. What if something went wrong? Karina had seemed very anxious when she left the restaurant with Bongo. The mercs were in trouble and Xiao was with them. What if Karina couldn't help them? Bongo had said they might be spaced. Lakshmi law was extremely strict, but she hadn't known it was that strict. What if she had to take her siblings back to the Bathsheba? She didn't have a clue how to fly the ship. Darius probably knew more than her. If she had to resort to allowing him to take the controls, who knew what he might do? The children had been playing for ages, and she had been growing more and more irritated by their noise. She was tired, and she felt nauseated as well, as if she'd eaten something that didn't agree with her, though she hadn't had anything at the restaurant. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe she should have eaten something. She strode to the open doorway to tell her brother and sister to be quiet, but what she saw changed her mind. She'd thought they were having a regular running race, though Nala's limp would slow her down. But in fact Nala had an arm over Darius's shoulder and he was helping her, not very successfully, which was causing them to giggle and shriek as they staggered along. A lump rose in her throat. "What's wrong, Parthenia?" Darius asked, picking up on her feelings right away. There was no point in telling him she was fine. He knew she wasn't, and he would be hurt or confused by the lie. "I'm wondering what's happening with Karina and the black dogs." Darius and Nala had drawn to a halt. Her brother said, "Why don't you ask her?" "Lakshmi comms don't work outside the station." "Oh, then why don't you send to her?" "I can't." Didn't he know? "Why not? Did you forget your elixir?" "No, I have some, but—" "Darius, we can't cast anymore." "Didn't anyone tell you?" The little boy's eyes grew round. "No, no one told me." "How come?" We don't know. It just happened. That's why it took us so long to find you when you were on Deck Zero. We were casting locate, but it wasn't working. It seemed remarkable Darius wasn't aware the mages had lost their ability. But when she thought about it, it made sense. He'd been unconscious when they'd realised what had happened. And since then he'd been recovering with Nala. He must have missed their discussions, or he hadn't been listening properly. "That's bad," he commented. "I like casting." "So do I. Will it come back?" "No one knows. Maybe one day. I hope so." "You're like me now," said Nala. "Yeah," Darius replied, crestfallen. "I don't feel like playing." He stepped out from under her arm. "It's okay. Don't be sad. Let's run again." But Darius was walking away from her, heading for the bridge. "Darius, I need you to help me run. I'll help you later. I want to rest." He passed Parthenia and sat in the co-pilot's seat. "Will you help me run, Parthenia?" Nala asked. "Of course." She took her sister's hand. For a few minutes she trotted slowly alongside as Nala hobbled up and down. But then Nala said, "I want to stop. I'm tired." Parthenia suspected she wasn't actually tired. She guessed she didn't find her older sister half as much fun to play with as Darius. "Why don't you sit down for a while?" "Is Karina coming back soon?" "I think so." When would Karina return? It had been hours since they'd parted ways. Surely she must have fixed the problem with the mercs by now. Not being able to send to her was frustrating. As she stepped onto the bridge, Parthenia was confused to see Darius head down, with his eyes closed and his lips moving silently. He appeared to be sending to someone, though she knew that was impossible. She helped Nala to sit down and opened an interface to give her something to do. Darius continued to have a private conversation in his head. Then she noticed her elixir bottle on the console in front of him. The cap was off and a few drops sat on the surface. He clearly hadn't believed her when she'd told him the mages could no longer cast. He'd wanted to try for himself. Poor Darius. He was suffering the same shock and unhappiness she and their siblings had experienced. It would take him time to get used to the fact. He opened his eyes and looked up. "Karina says hi." Parthenia froze. "I can cast. You were wrong." Darius! He had to be deluded. "Darius, are you sure?" "It's okay. Karina was surprised too." Was it possible? He seemed very confident, and it wasn't like him to lie. "Well, goodness!" Parthenia sat down. No one had tested him. When they'd learned they'd lost their abilities, everyone had been so devastated, no one had thought to check if the same applied to their youngest brother. Even Jace hadn't suggested it, and Darius hadn't been aware of the news, so he hadn't tested himself. But it was possible he was the odd one out. As a spirit mage, he was different. "You really sent to Karina?" "Uh-huh." "That's wonderful. I'm so happy you can still cast." What she said was true, but she couldn't help feeling somewhat jealous as well. What was worse, she knew Darius was aware. "Me too. Now I'll be able to cast for everyone. So it won't be so bad for you after all." "Thanks, that's kind, Darius. What did Karina say when you spoke to her? Is she on her way back with the mercs?" "No, she didn't talk about that. Parthenia, she was really sad, but she wouldn't tell me why." Chapter 23. The guard opened the cell door. As Karina went in, Bongo said he would wait for her outside. The black dogs were a sorry sight. Rhys had a black eye and a busted lip. Van Hasty's nose and knuckles were bleeding, and though Xiao didn't have a scratch on her, Karina had never seen her look so down. Did the mercs know they had about 10 minutes to live? 5 minutes, the guard said. That's all you get. But that's it. We need time to get them to the airlock. Gotta keep to the schedule or there's hell to pay. He closed the door and the lock faintly hissed as it shut. What did he say? Rhys asked. Something about an airlock? They didn't know. Thank the stars you're here, said Shao. What took you so long? Can you get us out? Or can you get us separate cells at least? Asked Van Hasty. There isn't room to spit in here. What the hell were you thinking? Karina yelled. Didn't you hear the warning I gave you on the Peregrine? Shao, I can't believe you let this happen. You were with me on the first visit. You know how strict they are here. I know. The pilot winced. I tried to stop the fight, but things got out of hand. When the guards arrived, I kept my distance, but the bar patrons pointed me out and said I was with them. Great. Just great. Is it really bad? Do you know our sentence? Are we going to be here a long time? You're... Karina choked up. Her chest heaved and she fought not to cry. She had had her fallings out with Shao, but she counted the woman as a friend, one of very few. And though she wasn't close with Rhys, Van Hasty or the other mercs, they were like extended family. Why, oh why, had she come to Lakshmi Station? The trip had turned into a disaster. The mages had lost their powers, and now 7 mercs were about to die, including the only experienced pilot they had. We're what? Shao asked. Karina, what's wrong? We could apologise to the guys we scrapped with if it would help, Rhys offered. I'm not apologising, said Van Hasty. They started it. Karina was tempted to ask what had happened. Where were the people the mercs had fought? Were they going to be spaced too? Or were the Lakshmi authorities picking on the outsiders? But there was no time. They had only a few minutes left. She took a deep breath. There's no good way to say this, but your sentence for what you did is execution. You're going to be spaced very soon. If there's anything you want me to tell anyone, any message you want me to pass on, you have to say it. Her words were lost in the merc's cries of dismay and outrage. Rhys got in her face and demanded she do something to save them. Van Hasty began wailing, while Shao only looked blank with disbelief. Shut up! Karina shouted. Shut up! She pushed Rhys's chest to get him away from her. There's nothing I can do! I told you! I warned you! And then, like a bunch of dumb morons, you go ahead and get into a fight anyway! What did you think would... Karina? The voice came from inside her head, and it was very familiar. Darius? The mercs continued to holler and sob. A couple of them were banging on the cell door, demanding to be released. Hey, Karina, said Darius. What's up? Where are you? Darius, you can send? Yeah, I can. Parthenia said we can't cast anymore, but I thought I would try anyway, and I can. It's great, huh? Yeah, it's great. She swallowed. Grief and dread over the mercs' impending deaths, at war with wonder and relief that Darius hadn't lost his mage ability. You don't seem very happy. Is something wrong? Yes. No, I mean, I can't talk to you now. I'll see you later when I get back, okay? Okay. The cast is fading now anyway. See you soon, Karina. He was gone. The mercs were quietening down. The reality of what was about to happen no doubt settling on them. How long do we have? Asked Shao, pale-faced. A couple of minutes at most. That's it? I'm sorry. It was all too much. The tenuous grip she'd been holding on herself broke, and tears overflowed her eyes. I'm so sorry. If there was anything I could do... Silence descended, except for Van Hasty's quiet sobs. No, said Pamuk. I'm sorry. I should have kept my cool when that guy grabbed me. No point in going over it now, said Rhys. What's done is done. I never thought I'd go out like this. Thought I'd get killed in battle, or my ship would get blown up, and that'd be it. I always knew the Black would get me in the end, another merc muttered. The cell door opened. Time's up, said the guard. Can't we have just another minute? Asked Karina, still weeping. None of the mercs had told her their last wishes yet. Time's up, repeated the guard. Unless you want to step outside without a suit too. Stars, I'm going. She found herself suddenly enveloped in a tight hug. Xiao had grabbed her. I'm sorry for what I said about your brother. It's okay. Karina cried into her shoulder. I forgave you days ago. The guard coughed. I have to go. I know, said Xiao, releasing her. It's been good knowing you, Karina. And you. I hope you make it to Earth. Karina took a final look at the 7 men and women before leaving. Bongo accompanied her as she plodded toward the exit. The other cells appeared empty. Unsurprisingly, most visitors to Lakshmi weren't so stupid as to get into a bar fight. But the mercs must have fought other people. Where were they? Weren't they going to be spaced too? Or had they already been executed? What happened to the others who took part in the fight, Bongo? Do you know? No, but I guess they or someone they know must have paid the fine. Like I was saying at the restaurant, the people who profit from Lakshmi are fabulously rich, and it's usually only those types who get into... What? She had been so deep in despair, the sense of what the alien had said took time to filter through. What fine? No one told me there was a fine. Why didn't you tell me? Oh, it's very expensive. You probably don't want to. Where do I pay? Do I still have time? She picked up her pace. Where do I go? Tell me where to go. The account section is... Let me see. I'm not sure if I remember. Swivelling to face the alien, she scooped him up and held him at eye level. His many legs uselessly windmilled in mid-air. You'd better remember, fast. If my friends die, you're the next one who'll be spaced. The end. This has been Fatal Star, Star Mage Saga Book 7, written and narrated by J.J. Green. The next book in the Star Mage Saga series is Galactic Rift, Star Mage Saga Book 8. For more J.J. Green books, visit jjgreenauthor.com.